Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 21, Unexpected Interrogation. Narrator POV. Congratulations to the winner of the Muspelheim World Tournament, declared the announcer. He looked toward Doyle intently. The satisfied yells of excitement could still be heard from the seating area, however. Players have already started to leave the arena, going back to their respective worlds. The announcer finally reached the ground surface and approached Doyle. "I gotta say, that was a nice fight, Mr. Doyle," he said with a constant smile. Although players were not able to move facial features in the game, this announcer had changed his smile several times during the fight. Doyle felt that this announcer must be some kind of dev. The way he acted made Doyle feel like he knew everything about him, which was probably true. "I also gotta say, I thought that you could only scream. It's nice to know that you can talk normally," said Doyle. "Ha ha ha, you are funny, Mr. Doyle. I'm sure you know that I am a developer of the Yggdrasil game. You can call me Hiroshi for the time being," he said with the same smile as he reached out his hand for a professional handshake. Doyle looked towards the hand and then back at Hiroshi. "Hiroshi, huh? Must be Japanese," he thought. Seconds later, he reached out his hand to shake his hand. As soon as Doyle's hand completely grabbed Hiroshi's, they were immediately teleported from the arena. The sounds of loud chatter that cloaked the arena disappeared with the snap of a finger. They were teleported to a plain white room. Within the room, there were no windows nor doors that led out of this room. Hiroshi turned around and walked towards the center of the room and spawned an office desk with two chairs that were all the same white color as the room. Then he looked up and signaled for Doyle to come over a sit down. Think of the room like the room Morgan Freeman sat in when he said, "I am God." I'll also insert an image here. Doyle walked towards the chair but didn't sit down. He didn't understand why was he there. Was this what happened before they give the rewards? Or maybe this is exactly how they give the rewards for the tournament, he thought. He didn't understand what the dev wanted from him, but he had a weird feeling that it wasn't for the reward. "Ah, come on, Mr. Doyle, have a seat. No need to be so stiff," said Hiroshi, signaling again for Doyle to sit in the seat on the other side of the work desk. Doyle finally sat down and Hiroshi started to look in the drawer of his desk for something. A moment later, he pulled out a couple of white folder with a couple papers inside. "So Mr. Doyle, how are you enjoying Yggdrasil?" he asked while opening the folder. "It's a good game," Doyle replied dryly. "That's good. Is there anything you have come across recently that hasn't been up to par within the game, like bugs or any inconsistencies?" asked Hiroshi as he continued go through the papers. "No." "Okay, good. If you could rate the game, what would you dash?" "Let's cut to the chase. Why am I here? Is there something that you devs need help with or something?" Doyle interrupted. Hiroshi stopped shuffling through the papers and looked up. His constant smile was now gone. Instead, the mouth that was there before was gone and the face was now completely featureless. "You're right. There is something that we have been noticing. It's not like you're in trouble or anything like that, at least not yet," he stated with his usual nice professional voice gone. "You see, there have been some odd things that we have noticed about you, Mr. Doyle, that are much different from the other players. We were ignoring it at first, but now that I have had the chance to meet you, I decided it wouldn't hurt to talk to you about it. You wouldn't mind, would you?" "As if I have a choice," Doyle complained internally. "Sure. Go ahead," Doyle replied. "Thank you for your cooperation. Now firstly, how exactly did you find out about the Ghosthood hidden quest?" The game was still in its early access phase, so it makes no sense how a player could find out about it. Let's just say I have my own personal issues that the game allowed me to explore. It didn't prohibit me from doing what I would have liked to do in real life, so I chose to do it here. It was nothing but a coincidence that I found out about the quest," Doyle stated. He did not hesitate nor stutter when speaking because he knew that they would still be suspicious of him if they believed he was lying. He wanted to sound as believable as possible. Hearing what Doyle said, Hiroshi was mostly stunned. He hadn't expected such a straightforward and dark answer. It made him speechless. He then decided not to get into details about Doyle's answer since it was none of his business and he did not want to come off as rude. "Ahem, okay, next question. It has been brought to our attention that you have not logged out of the game since it first launched. Although we have many players who have countless hours within Yggdrasil, everyone has to log off at one point. Could you please explain to me why is this?" "It's nothing serious. It's just because of my predicament. I have been paralyzed for a few years now, so I tend to play games much more than the average player. My family is very wealthy, as you can tell from my in-game purchases. I am connected to a machine that automatically feeds me at certain times of the day. It's a machine my family invested money for in order for me to be able to experience the game all the time. Additionally, I live alone, so I have no reason to log off to talk to family. Yggdrasil is my way of experiencing walking again. That's my reason for always being online. I honestly didn't know Yggdrasil devs were so indifferent about people's circumstances," Doyle said in a slightly sad tone. "Oh, no, it's not that. We just have to make sure that there is no cheat dash." "Are all of your questions about my personal life?" Doyle interrupted. His sad voice echoed within the room as silence enveloped Hiroshi. Hiroshi honestly did not know what to say. He hadn't expected such dark and depressing answers. It was making him seem like a horrible person. Even he had to admit there was technology out there that would auto-feed a person, and he already knew of Doyle's wealth due to him always buying cash shop items. At this point, most of his questions were going down a bad road and it could possibly cost a major blow to Yggdrasil, especially with the kind of power that Doyle had due to his wealth. He could only imagine what would happen if Doyle decided to do something against them with his family's backing. I should just end this here before I say something I shouldn't, Hiroshi thought. Sorry about that, it was my fault for not doing a better job with the questions. I do hope you forgive my rudeness. That will be all for the questions, we already have our answers, Hiroshi said in a polite tone, trying not to offend Doyle anymore. Hiroshi then got up and the work desk vanished immediately. Doyle also stood up, waiting for Hiroshi to get him out of this room with no exit. Ahem, you can go through this door here, Hiroshi said, directing Doyle. In the direction he was pointing Doyle, a opening in the wall grew to the size of door. Doyle saw this and walked towards it. The outside of the door glowed a bright white light. After watching Doyle leave the room, Hiroshi sighed heavily. He felt like a huge weight was lifted off of his shoulders. Damn, that was close. Why didn't the guys get more information before sending me here to interrogate him? This almost costed us our entire game. Years of work would have gone straight down the drain. Thank God it's over, I'm never doing this again. Doyle's POV. Well, that went well. I had already expected the devs to come and ask me about my oddities sooner or later, so I already had plans for that. I had already came up with reasons as to why I was so different. I made sure not to stutter nor hesitate when I spoke so it could all seem real. Additionally, I reminded him of how rich my non-existent family was so that he could really choose his words wisely, or he could stop asking me questions altogether. It's crazy how money has so much power. Anyway, if I'm not mistaken, then that should be the end of their suspicion on me. I'm sure they wouldn't want to offend such a powerful backer such as my family. Walking through the white door, I was teleported to another all-white room. However, there was a different dev here. He wore the same tuxedo as Hiroshi, but his face was instead a silverish gray color. He stood in front of a long table with 10 chairs exactly. This must be the room where all 9 of the world champions will meet. That means they'll see touch me. I wasn't the first champion inside the room. There was another guy who wore pitch black armor that was already sitting down talking to another player who wore silver armor with brown boots. From the body build of this player, it was obvious that it was a woman. I walked up to the long table. This caught the attention of the dev and the 2 players. Hello Mr. Doyle, it's nice of you to join us. Please, have a seat while we wait on the other champions to arrive. Chapter 22, Gathering of World Champions. Hello Mr. Doyle, it's nice of you to join us. Please, have a seat while we wait on the other champions to arrive. I sat down at the end of the table, a bit further from everyone else. It's not that I'm scared of being next to them, I just can't be comfortable around people I don't know. As I sat down, I took this chance to take another more clear look around the room. The room itself was pure white, but it was much more luxurious than the last white room I left. The floor was pure white with marble tiles. It shined brightly from the lights inside of the room. The decor inside of the room reflected back off of it. The walls were a very clean white with portraits of Yggdrasil's nice viewpoints inside of the game, along with certain portraits of people. There were only 9 pictures of these people, with one catching my eye. Within the picture was an old bearded man. He had long white hair and his eyes were all white without a pupil. Hearing the idle chatter of the 2 players further down the table, I looked back down towards the table and realized that there were luxurious tableware decorated along the table for 9 individuals. Though it was there for us, I'm sure it's just for aesthetic purposes since players can't eat things in game. Hey. I looked towards the direction the voice sounded from. It was the smaller build warrior in armor. From the sound of the voice and the body frame I can tell it is a woman. What's up? I said curiously. The woman scooted her chair a bit closer to where I was situated, though she was still on the opposite side of the table from me. You're Doyle? Sorry, I heard the dev say your name. Although she said sorry, it didn't sound like she meant it at all. Yeah, I'm Doyle. You are? Oh right, I'm Malice. I've been wondering for a real long time since I've seen you in the leaderboards though. Is Doyle your real name? She said with her hand on the chin piece of her helmet. No, I replied dryly. Jesus, this girl, she's different from what I thought. She looked so composed earlier when I saw her. No? So you chose that name yourself? Not gonna lie, that's kinda lame. Why would you even choose Doyle? There are so many other cooler names out there. For instance, my name, Malice, she said with a bit of arrogance. I'm sure if she could see my face move, my eyes would be twitching. What does she mean lame? The name has a cool meaning behind it. Besides, at least my name isn't something like Soccer Mom 69. Unlike other people, I chose my name with serious thought behind it. I bet she just went with whatever sounded cool in her head at the time. There's nothing lame about it. It's simple, has a special ring to it, and has multiple meanings that fits me, I said, irritated. Malice, quit bothering people. No one cares about what you think is cool or not. This time it was the guy wearing the pitch black armor who spoke. Malice and I looked at him. He had already been on my side of the table. He walked closer towards me and reached out his hand, then spoke. I'm Symboltidic, nice to meet you Doyle. You too, I said as I reached out my hand and shook his. Symboltidic, shut up, you're just saying that because your name sounds dumb too, the girl said as she held her stomach laughing. Damn it, this girl? She's lucky we're not out in the open world right now. Don't listen to her, she'll shut up sooner or later. Anyway, which world did you fight in? Ignoring Malice's laughter, I replied. I fought in the Muspelheim World Tournament. You? Muspelheim? Oh, if I'm not mistaken, I had heard rumors of Shadow also participating in that tournament. It's honestly annoying because I wanted to fight him, it's the reason I went to the Yotenheim tournament. Oh yeah, I fought Shadow. I paused, thinking about me and Shadow's fight, then continued. He has good reaction timing, which makes me believe he practiced fighting in the real world as well. Symbolitic stared at me for a minute then laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, of course he practices in the real world, how else would a fighter be so good? Where do you live, under a rock? Ha ha ha, he screamed. What the hell is wrong with these people? I'm surrounded by idiots. What? Is it public knowledge or something? It was my first time meeting him, what do you expect? Haha, sorry, it's just that I would have assumed you would know about it already, but hearing you sound so unsure made it obvious that you really are clueless. Symbolitic paused, then cleared his throat. Ahem, yeah, he is a fighter in the real world. It's mostly because of his family. He has the benefit of learning how to fight while we are stuck inhaling the toxic air outside. Though I am well off, it's because I worked hard to support my family and get there, while he just got handed those things. Everyone knows this, and it irritates me. It's the reason I want to fight him. Support your family, huh? I sat in silence for a couple seconds before I replied to him. You should stop complaining over jealousy, at least you have a family. I said before losing interest in this conversation. I could hear Malice trying to enter our small conversation, but I just ignored her annoying cries. What do you mean? Said Symbolitic with confusion. Hey, stop ignoring me. I got up ignoring Symbolitic, and Malice's non-stop talking and walked toward the quiet dev at the end of the table who had been just watching without saying anything this whole time. May I help you, Mr. Doyle? Said the dev. For some reason I could sense nervousness inside of his voice, or maybe it was my imagination. Yeah, I was just wondering when is the other going to arrive? It's been over 10 minutes already. As soon as I asked this I could hear Malice behind me talking. Looks like the others are arriving now. Finally. I turned around to see a bunch of portals that looked like doors. Then the dev finally replied. Sorry for the wait, the tournaments from each world ended at different times due to the amount of participants in that world. We should be starting now. What's up with this guy? Why does he seem so nervous? I looked back at the dev as I walked back to my seat, however there was no facial features on his face, which made it hard to confirm my suspicion. As I sat down, the other champions started to walk through the portals. As they appeared one by one, the dev stood up with his hands behind his back professionally and announced out loud for everyone in the room to hear. Now that everyone has arrived, we can begin. Can everyone have a seat at the table? I looked around at the players who walked towards their seats and found Touch Me. Although he wore a different armor, I could easily distinguish between him from everyone else because of the insect features of his character. He had some sort of antenna or horns that was inside of his armor helmet. I also looked for another certain person, Lucifer. Honestly, I didn't know if he would make it here, but with his strength now he should have been able to at least put up a fight. That's unlucky. Well, it still doesn't change things, my plans are still going accordingly. After everyone sat down, the dev continued his speech. Congratulations to all of you for your victory. There were many contestants, but all of you put in hard work to get here. I know all of you must be confused as to why you were brought here instead of back to the open world, and that's because of this. Saying this, the dev lifted his arm to press something on his status menu that only he could see, then a notification appeared in front of me. You have received the special title and job class World Champion. Hehe. I can't help but feel happy with this reward. I looked around at the others at the table, and it's obvious that they all received the same notification as me because they are also looking towards their status menu. Before too much longer, the dev spoke once more. This is the special class World Champion. You 9 champions are the only players in the game who will own this class, unless a certain circumstance happens. This means that this special class is exclusively only for you 9 players present at this table. After saying this, the dev stopped and looked around, allowing his words to be processed. It didn't take long before a group of players began to lowly celebrate. However, there was one who couldn't hold back their excitement. Exclusively for me? That means I'm special. I have a class only for myself, said Malice as she hugged herself. Damn it, didn't you hear? It's for all of us, not just you, said Symbolitic, correcting her while rubbing his head tiredly. A couple laughs were heard after this, but I wanted to see Touch Me's reactions, so I looked in his direction. I thought he would have been celebrating as well, but instead, he still hadn't taken his eyes off of his status menu. He was focusing solely on the virtual window in front of him. After a couple more seconds, the dev continued. Winning the world tournament is no small feat, so we had to reward each champion with rewards befitting a champion. With that in mind, we have prepared another reward for all of you. This is also a reward exclusively only for the 9 of you. Every one of you will have a chance to put in a blueprint for an item. You will not only be able to give us the design you want, but also you can tell us what abilities it will have, its lore behind it, and more. This time everyone celebrated, including Touch Me. The dev then snapped his fingers and another notification appeared in front of me. This virtual screen was very familiar to me since I had once used this same screen before. It was the window that players used to create items. It's the same screen I once used to make my one and only divine item, Ring of Secrets. However, the difference with this virtual screen was that we didn't have to use materials, and could instead make what our hearts desired without any material inefficiencies. Chapter 23, World Champion Item. Dev's POV. Are you sure this is what you want? Remember, there are other things you can choose. The dev stood in front of Malice with an complex expression, though it was not viewable in the game. It had been over 13 minutes since he had given all 9 of the world champions the permission for item creation of their personal item. In front of him was Malice. She had confirmed to him that her item would be a sword. She walked over giving the design, flavor text, and abilities to him through the status menu. Even the dev could agree that it was a very nice sword. It was adorned with black and clear crystals that complemented her armor. Not to mention the abilities she wanted for the sword were doable. It wasn't too overpowered nor was it too weak for a world champion class item. He thought that it was a pretty good idea for a weapon, however, that was it. To him, this sword was nothing too special, it was something anyone could come up with. It lacked creativity and originality, even the abilities were straightforward and not hard to counter with the right circumstances. Sorry if this is repetitive, but are you sure this is what you want? He said, looking back and forth between Malice and the virtual screen. You've asked me this 3 times now, it's getting kind of old. Yes, this is what I want. With this sword I'll definitely become the strongest, she said smugly. The dev sighed internally, then he began finalizing the weapon. While doing this he looked toward the flavor text. This is where a player's role-playing lore would be. He was a fan of this addition in the game because it allowed the creator to make pieces of history, and with the right amount of items, a creator could quite literally create their own story, which would then be immortalized within Yggdrasil. A sword so powerful and pretty that even the gods envied its wielder. Well, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be, though, it is a bit short, but that's okay, he thought. Complete. The completion notification appeared, indicating that the item had been created. He then reached into his admin inventory and pulled out the sword. He looked towards the fidgeting Malice as she reached her hands out, wiggling her fingers. Here. It's finished, he said, handing over the sword. Yes, it's just as I thought it would be, she said while test swinging the sword. That's good to know. Malice continued swinging in swift maneuvers, however. After a couple more swings she stopped and stared at her sword, then turned around to look at the dev. Hey, Mr. Dev Guy, why isn't any of its abilities working? Is my sword broken? She said with a voice on the verge of tears. The dev looked at Malice with an expression that said, how old are you? 10, then he replied. You are not permitted to use any combat abilities while in this room. All combative abilities will be blocked. Oh, then send me back to the open world. We should be done here after our item is finished, right? If that the case, let me go back so I can test out my weapon, she said eagerly. Her sad baby voice from before had already vanished like it was never there from the beginning. The dev immediately snapped his fingers, teleporting the girl away without any response. Jesus, that girl is annoying. He had already completed almost of everyone's item except 2 people. One was the player, Touch Me. He had been quietly focusing on his virtual screen this whole time without making a single sound. This slightly made the dev excited to see what the insectoid was creating. He was a man who appreciated good creative ideas. It was one of the reasons he pursued becoming a game developer for his career. The other was the mysterious and now famous #1 player, Doyle. Doyle had become an anomaly to the devs of Yggdrasil early in the game, causing questions about his avatar and his account altogether. He had peculiar things going on with him. For an example, he has not even once logged off since the game's launch. This was not a bad thing for the game in all honesty, but it caused a lot of devs to question how this was even possible, which also led them to believe that he was using exploits within the game. Things got cleared up in the end. One of the lead developers decided to investigate Doyle himself, and that's when Doyle revealed his dark circumstances. Apparently the reason he even found out about the Ghosthood quest was due to his suicidal tendencies. This did raise the flag of why the lead developer even allowed him to continue to play the game knowing such details about Doyle. It was obvious that he should instead be put in a mental hospital somewhere instead of playing this game. Yggdrasil was made for multiple audiences. It's one of the reasons the devs banned R18 things from occurring in the game, but at the end of the day the game still shows things like death, etc. What stopped the lead developer from doing anything, however, was that Doyle was obviously a part of some powerful family. Yggdrasil itself was not backed by an influential backer big such as Doyle family. This meant any wrong move on the dev's side could possibly destroy the whole game itself. In the current world, the wealthy and influential held more leverage than ever. Influential organizations and corporations were the leaders of the world. In the end, discussions about Doyle were stopped by the higher UPS in order not to jeopardize anything. Back to the present, Doyle also was focused on his item creation. He hadn't looked up since he began creating his item. The dev was also just as excited to view what Doyle would present to him. About 7 more minutes passed before Touch Me finally stood up out of his chair, then looked in the direction of the dev. He then pushed in his chair and proceeded to walk down closer to the dev. I finished my item. What do I do next? Okay, all you have to do is forward it here, said the dev as he pointed. Touch Me forwarding the item and it appeared within the dev's site. The dev began analyzing the item. Compliance with law. The item is a shining white armor with a helm that has a huge blue sapphire embedded in its chest, radiating with pure and divine light. Additionally, it had a red cape that hung over the left shoulder. The design is quite nice. Honestly, it's a very good design, though it may lack a bit of originality. It was definitely creative. This might be one of the best armor sets that I have seen in a long time. The dev finished analyzing the design and moved on to the abilities. The abilities were much better described than most of the other world champion items the dev had read. It was also much more powerful. Just as armor is intended, it was for defense. Until recently everyone else had created items that were for only offense and did nothing to help defense. The World Champion class was already a massive offensive boost, though no one knew that yet, so he had expected at least one person to make an item with defensive properties. Now that he finally found someone who was not only worrying about offense, he smiled internally. Reading throughout the flavor text, he was a bit stunned though. Everything so far was okay until he reached the flavor text. What the? The dev was speechless at what he was reading. Huh? I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said? I didn't hear, asked Touch Me. He didn't clearly hear what the dev said. Oh, it's nothing. The dev lied. What he saw in the flavor text was an obsession. A huge obsession. This obsession was with the word justice. Literally in every sentence was the word justice. Some of it literally didn't even make sense, but it still had the word justice in it. If the flavor text was to be summed up, it would probably say something like, "This is the armor of justice." The dev internally facepalmed. I guess everything couldn't be perfect. Looking back towards Touch Me, he asked the question that asked everyone before he finalized their item. Are you sure that this is what you want? Yes. This is the item I know I will need in the future, said Touch Me confidently. Alright. The dev then began finishing the item's completion. Doyle's POV. This should do it. This whole time I had been confused as to what I really wanted. There were countless things I could do, but this is a one-time thing. This will be my only time to make the perfect world champion item. I'm sure the other champions don't fully understand just how strong a world champion item truly is because the dev never explained that. But I understand just how strong this item can get, which is why I took time just to brainstorm on what I should go with. I took one more look at my item and smiled, then I looked up at my surroundings. Surprisingly, the room was empty. The only people in here are me, Touch Me, and the dev. When did everyone leave? Was I that focused that I didn't even get to see everyone leave? Whatever. I got up and walked to where Touch Me and the dev was. Seeing me approaching, Touch Me turned around. You just finished as well? Looks like we're the only ones left. Yeah. It surprised me because I didn't even see everyone leave. I replied. Haha, I know, right? The same with me. I was so immersed in my item creation that I even forgot that I was here, haha. I giggled along with Touch Me for a minute before he continued. Phew. Anyways, which world did you fight in? I fought in Muspelheim. What about you? I already knew which world he participated in, but I decided to still ask him. Muspelheim, huh? If I'm not mistaken, didn't Shadow, right? Yeah, he was there. I fought him. I interrupted him. I'm tired these guys saying the same thing. Yeah, Shadow. It must have been a good fight. Oh right, I fought in Alfheim. The fights were decent, but the best fight was my last one. Haha, I fought this angel named Lucifer. Though he wasn't super high on the leaderboards, he was just as competitive, he said eagerly. Lucifer? Wait, what? PFTTT, ha ha ha. I couldn't hold back my laugh hearing this. That idiot went to Alfheim of all places. That was a destined defeat. He should have let me know where he was going so I could have at least given him a better chance at winning, haha. You must know him. Is he a friend of yours? He asked. Yeah, he is a friend of mine. How did he fight? I asked curiously. I got to hear about this so I can rub it in his face. The guy was great. He used strong divine spells along with some golem summons. It was quite difficult to deal with at first, but I ended finding some kind of way. Oh, I see. That good. Mr. Touch Me, your item is finished, said the dev, transferring the armor to Touch Me. Oh okay, thanks. I'll try it on. And just like I knew, it was the platinum armor that he wore in the novel/anime series. It looked much cooler in person though. Nice armor. I complimented. Thanks. I tried my best with its design. Well, it was meeting you. Wait, what's your name again? I laughed and then responded. My name is Doyle. Touch Me stood still, just staring at me for a minute before yelling in surprise. Wait, Doyle? You're Doyle? The #1 player? Ah damn it, how didn't I know about this? Haha, yeah, that's me. It's not your fault really. I don't go around telling people who I am, and most people don't know what I look like, so it's normal. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't even heard any news about you. Well, it was nice to meet you, Doyle. You too. Oh, how about we add each other? We could party up at some point as well. Oh, sure, I'm down. After adding Touch Me, he left and I walked up towards the dev. Just like before, the dev gave off this nervous vibe when I was around, though now I'm starting to understand why. I finished my item. Okay, good. Now you can just forward it to me please, he said respectfully. After I sent it to him, he started to go through the item's information, probably to take things out that were too overpowered. However, I have a plan if that happens. Mr. Doyle, this is a very creative idea. None of the other champions even thought of something like this, he said. I just nodded and continued to wait. After a couple more minutes, I noticed that his fingers were twitching a little, then he spoke. Mr. Doyle, I don't mean to be rude, but what is this? I smiled internally. Well, this is the item I want to create. I named it Six Eyes. And no, I meant its abilities. He stuttered. The item I decided to create was an idea from my previous world. It came from another popular anime in my last life. I wasn't too informed about that specific anime since I mostly focused on Overlord, however I did know of a very popular character that was in that series. His name was Gojo Satoru if I'm not mistaken. His powers were something that were the very definition of overpowered. I decided to try and use those powers and techniques as abilities of the item Six Eyes. I know that Six Eyes does not use Limitless, but I added it as an ability within the Six Eyes within the story. For those who do not understand Gojo's power or do not know who that is at all, I will explain it when necessary so you guys won't be lost or confused. Is there something wrong with its abilities, Mr. Dev? I said sarcastically. Ahem, yes, sorry but this is a bit too much. Alright, okay well let's just add it to the flavor text. I'm really into roleplaying and adding this to the lore could allow me to still be able to use the idea in some kind of way. I really don't want to have to completely delete it after I put so much effort into it. Oh, you want to just swap some of it to the flavor text? I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good idea. Sure, this game revolves around role-playing anyway, so it's no problem. After a couple tweaks to my item, it was finally complete. I decided to add the techniques to the flavor text and keep the Limitless as its ability along with Gojo's 6 Eyes ability. So in the end, the dev believed this item to be a defensive item with support quirks. However, he doesn't know just how clueless he is. Here you are, Mr. Doyle. Your item is now complete, he said, handing me my item. I reached out and grabbed it. In my hands were 2 beautiful ocean blue eyeballs. Chapter 24, Old Man Caster. Doyle's POV. My body was engulfed in a bright blue light as I switched to my human form. The black and grey coat wrapped around me and the white hair on my head hung over the black blindfold. The rings that I wore on my hand were now on top of my black gloves. The dev stood there watching me curiously. He had gone quiet once again, waiting to see how I would equip my item. I lowered my head to reach behind and untied the blindfold. I could have easily just unequipped the blindfold without going through all of this, but I wanted to be a bit more dramatic. Underneath my blindfold, where a person's eyes usually were, was empty eye sockets. There were no eyeballs inside of the sockets, instead there were the blood red colored insides of my eye sockets. I had designed this to look as realistic as possible, so I'm sure that this must have disgusted the dev. I then inserted the ocean blue eyeballs into my eye sockets, or rather I equipped them. As soon as I equipped them, my eyes began to glow with a deep blue. This is because of the way the eyes work. It has an passive ability when not covered, similar to the real Gojo's eyes. I quickly covered my eyes with the blindfold once more and changed my back to my original ghost form, image of Doyle in human form without the blindfold. While this whole thing occurred, the dev stood patiently, watching what I was doing. He seemed very interested in how the eyes worked. I have to say, Mr. Doyle, that item is really creative. Even the flavor text was something that I don't think any of us devs could think of, complimented the dev. Thank you. This did take a lot of thought. I paused for a couple of seconds, then continued in a lower voice that only I myself could hear. But I can't take full credit for it. It wasn't my creativity that led to the creation of this item. I just got lucky that I remembered this idea from my past life. Pardon? Sorry, but could you repeat that? I didn't hear dash. Before the dev could finish his sentence, I interrupted. It's nothing. Now that I'm finished here, how does this work? Will you just send me back to the last world I was in previously before the tournament? I asked. Yes, though if you want, you could go to any of the other worlds from here if you want. Is there a place you want to go to specifically? Yeah, could you change the destination to Yotenheim? Sure. I see you're in a bit of a hurry, so I won't hold you any longer. It was nice meeting you, Mr. Doyle. Hopefully, we can talk again someday. Saying this, the dev snapped his fingers and I was teleported to Yotenheim's checkpoint. Yotenheim's checkpoint was located in the high snowy mountains where almost everything was frozen. You could see the frozen icicles hanging from the checkpoint teleporter. When I saw this frozen place, my mind went back to when I first entered Yggdrasil through the angel/goddess's help. I feel like I'm back in Niflheim, the frozen land of fog and mist, the place where I first arrived when that angel/goddess brought me to this world. Where I killed myself countless times in order to simply get another race. Others may say that I'm crazy for doing that painful quest, that I could have just waited till I got an item that allowed me to change my race later on. But I'm glad about my choice, to the point where I'd do it again if I had to. I don't regret gutting myself. I learned the hard way that if you sit back and wait instead of getting things done immediately, you will only suffer. Thinking this, my mind subconsciously played back memories of my previous life, or more specifically nightmares. I can't bring myself to call those memories of mine. I won't. Those nightmares of me being beaten black and blue like a stray dog replayed in my mind. My now blue eyes narrowed sharply and my covered hands balled up. I balled my fists as hard as I could. However, unlike last time, no blood was drawn. That figures, since my body has no blood now, I am no longer human. I sighed heavily, trying to release my pent-up anger. Even though they're dead, I still want to kill them. Ding. The sound of a notification sounded off and grabbed me out of my mind. Alright, the reason I came here. Because of that quest. I read the notification. Skrimir is now aware of your presence. Find him in the Utgard stronghold. Utgard. I murmured to myself. The reason I had come to Yotenheim was because of a class advancement quest I had gotten after I had maxed out my levels in Illusion Expert. I had planned on completing this quest before the tournament, but I changed my mind and decided to do it after, since I wouldn't get interrupted. I wouldn't have to worry about the tournament starting before I completed this quest. Now, the question is, where is that? This my first time here, so I'm not sure where to go. I looked around at my surroundings. The only thing I could see was snowy mountain peaks. The clouds from the atmosphere fogged up the further mountains, blocking my sight. I cast a flight spell and began flying down the mountains, towards the ground. The lower I got, the warmer the temperature got. In Yggdrasil, each world had its own temperature. These temperatures were not for every player though. For example, human players did not have immunities or resistance to hot or cold environments. This is why the worlds such as Asgard, Midgard, Yotenheim, and Vanaheim were most popular for humans because of its normal temperatures. Human players would only travel to the other worlds if they were properly geared. As I made it to the ground, I looked around once again at my environment. I couldn't help but admire Yggdrasil's beauty. I was in some woods with green abnormally tall trees. With each step I took, the crunching sound of the dead leaves could be heard. I traveled around and explored the environment, but I didn't wander too far since I didn't want to leave the domain of Skrimir. He was obviously the NPC that I had to meet for the quest, and since I got that notification earlier about him sensing my presence, I know that I'm not out of his range. While searching around the woods, I encountered giants. Giants were everywhere in these woods. Of course they were all trying to attack and kill me. However, there were other creatures like super large deers and mooses, which were not hostile at all. Additionally, unlike most deers, they did not run when encountering me. Instead, they would just stare at me, which made me feel a bit weird. I finally made it out of the woods and found a lake. At this lake there were small rodents drinking water. However, once I got close, they looked up at me and ran away immediately. I guess there are some normal animals around after all, I muttered. What was that about normal animals? I heard a voice coming from behind me and quickly twisted my body to see who was this person. The person in particular was an old man in a dark blue wizard gown. Up on the shoulders of the gown was golden armored pads with neat designs decorated. In his hand was a large staff that looked like a big white tree branch twisted tightly. At its top was a light blue crystal pearl that complemented his wizard gown. Seeing this guy, I questioned myself. I couldn't make sense of how this guy escaped my sight. How did he get so close to me without me knowing? I looked towards my map, which was always showing if any players or enemies was in my surrounding, but it showed that none was nearby me. What is this guy? How come he isn't showing up on the map? Ho ho, did I startle you? You seem taken aback, he said while giggling. His voice was of an old man, fitting his avatar's appearance. No, it's just I didn't see nor sense you, I said suspiciously. Ah, I see. You aren't the first to say such a thing, young lad. It's because of this, he said, lifting his hand which was holding his staff. On his finger was a golden ring. It looked similar to a wedding ring. You see, this ring helps me move around unnoticed. It's hard dealing with people, don't you agree? He said in a polite tone. So he has an item, maybe it's of divine class like my ring? That's the only way he could get so close to me without me noticing. Still, yeah, I guess. Anyway, who are you? And why did you approach me if you don't like being around people? I asked, my suspicion still lingering. Ah, right, I forgot to introduce myself. How rude of me. You can call me Castor. I came to this lake to look at the scenery. You see, Yotenheim is a really beautiful place, and I like to appreciate a good view every once in a while, he said. I looked around at the scenery. The lake water was clean and clear. You could see the fishes as they swam inside. On the other side of the lake, you could see the giant deers and other animals as they drank from the water. The sky was bright and beautiful. I could also see the snowy mountains that I had left from in the distance. Well, if I did have to agree on something, it would probably be that this place is pretty. I can admit that. I see, I replied back dryly. After saying this, I went back to looking at my map and around my surroundings on where I should go next to find Utgard. Young lad, you seem lost. Are you looking for something perhaps? Castor asked curiously. Sighed, this guy is annoying. Why is he so nosy? Why? I asked with an uninterested tone. I have been here since the beginning. I'm not new to this land. I could help you if you really wanted, he replied. This guy, why does he talk like this? Wait, let me test something. Oh yeah, you must have been playing Yggdrasil since it first launched, I stated while watching his reaction closely. Ho ho ho, exactly. You must be an older player as well, he said, laughing loudly. So he's not an NPC? Maybe I should ask for his help. He may know something. Yeah, you could say that. So you said you could help me. Do you know of a place called Utgard by any chance? I asked. Utgard, you say? Castor put his chin in his offhand from the staff. He seemed to be thinking very hard. So even you don't know, huh? Well, I figured as much. Can't be a quest if it doesn't have some sort of difficulty, I said, sighing lightly. Oh no, I never said I didn't know. It just takes this old mind a minute to boot up and work properly. You said Utgard, yeah? If I'm not mistaken, I've heard some strange things about a place similar to that up in the mountains. I've already looked there. No, you should try looking beyond the clouds blocking the view up there. You never know what you could find, he said, speaking in his usual weird tone. I looked back towards the mountains. The clouds moved slowly, but fast enough for the naked eye to see movement. So beyond the clouds, huh? I asked as I turned around to thank the old man. However, when I turned around, he was nowhere to be seen. Huh? Where the hell did he go? Chapter 25, Utgard Stronghold. I looked all around me, but the old man was nowhere to be found. There wasn't even any tracks left by him. It was as if he never was here in the first place. With my suspicions growing, I decided to look at the player leaderboards. Maybe I'd find him there. However, no matter how much I scrolled, the name Castor did not pop up. After reaching below number 200 on the leaderboards, I gave up on looking. It was obvious that he was, in some kind of way, strong. With this in mind, I know he wouldn't be that low on the leaderboards. I closed the status menu and looked back toward the snowy mountains. Well, no matter what I think of him, whether I should trust him or not doesn't matter. At the end of the day what he said is the only lead I have. I then cast the spell Greater Teleportation. I teleported back into the mountains, in the center where the checkpoint was located. I then cast the flight spell and began floating in the air. Without wasting any time I started my search looking around at the farther mountains that were covered by the fluffed clouds. I searched these mountains with double the effort. I made sure not to miss any spots. I had all the time in the world so I didn't rush through anything. Everything was smooth sailing honestly. However, after I changed course and started to travel in another direction through the clouds, I started to encounter monsters, more specifically giant birds. This world housed a lot of giants. I knew a little about Yotenheim's mythology somewhat due to my studies in my last life. It was the reason I wasn't surprised to see so many giant creatures. But these giant birds were truly vicious. It's not like I could see them coming either. The fog from the clouds made sure of that. As I traveled I kept my guard up. I tried multiple spells I thought would work to clear the foggy clouds. However, it was honestly no use. Each time I cleared the fog, it would come right back in only a matter of seconds. The birds, in particular, looked like huge hawks with enormously sharp talons. You may think that the birds' talons did not have any effect on me, but that's where you're wrong. Their talons was infused with magic properties, allowing them to be able to attack me. Fortunately, I had the 6 eyes equipped. You see, the way I designed the 6 eyes was mostly as a defensive item and an overpowered one at that. I put most of the offensive abilities into the flavor text, but essentially the 6 eyes I created had a base state called Infinity that ran passively non-stop. It was an impenetrable barrier that basically stopped any attack from injuring me. In the flavor text it's explained more in-depth as an barrier that didn't exactly stop anything from entering, rather, it slowed things down to an astronomically low speed, making it impossible to hit me. It operates the same way convergent and divergent sequences do in mathematics. The infinity is the convergence of an immeasurable series. Anything that approaches the infinity slows down and never reaches the user. This is because it takes the finite amount of space between the two subjects and divides it an infinite amount of times. In mathematical terms, no matter how many times someone divides a number, it will never be reduced to zero. Instead, they will be left with fractional units so infinitesimal it would become immeasurable to their eye. This did not mean that I was invincible though. The devs would not allow such an item to exist. The barrier could obviously be bypassed by world items, and depending on the circumstance, it was possible for another world champion item or guild weapon could bypass it as well. But that all depended on what abilities those items had. With all of this in mind, I still couldn't shake my uneasiness. It's probably because of the weird occurrences that have been happening since I've been here. After a few more hours of flying around, I finally started to see the fog from the clouds clearing up a little. It was easier to see further in the distance. Moments later I came face to face with some kind of path that was connecting the frozen mountains beyond the clouds. Seeing this, I knew I had to be heading in the right direction. I landed and began walking along the path. The ground was built using some kind of cobblestone similar to the material used to build medieval castles. After a couple of minutes of walking, I found that the path I followed was leading to a dead end. In front of me was a huge glacier. I honestly questioned how this route was even standing strong. Seeing this glacier, I did not stop walking. This was the only path I saw that was actually taking me somewhere. Even if it wasn't going to lead me to Utgard, it would definitely take me to some hidden area. I knew that the devs did not put all this here for nothing. They were 100% hiding something here. Due to my ghostly traits, I walked straight through the glacier, appearing on the other side of it. I was right. The path continued beyond this glacier, and further down the path, I could clearly see some sort of castle. As I walked along the path I looked at my surrounding. It snowed heavily this high up on the mountains. I'm sure if demi-human or human players were up here they would get some sort of freeze status if they weren't properly geared for this place. Compared to the other mountains further back, this place was more like a blizzard. To the right of the path I was walking on, there were some woods similar to the woods that were by the lake down at ground level. However, these were drenched in snow. I couldn't see any green on these trees due to each tree being drowned in snow. I could hear the loud roars of creatures inside of the woods, but I wasn't interested in any of them. The castle in front of me was more important. The left side of the path was more dangerous in my opinion. There was a deep trench that I saw no bottom to. It looked like if a person was to fall in there, they would continue falling forever. The deeper you looked, the darker the trench got. I finally made it to the walls of the castle. The walls were enormous, and it was obvious that they were thick as well, maybe 4 to 5 feet thick. The gate was already open, making me feel as if someone was welcoming me to enter. Image here possibly LOL. As soon as I entered and took my first step inside the gate I received a notification from the quest. You have entered Utgard's stronghold? Skrimir is waiting for you. Ding. Due to being the first explorer of the dungeon Utgard's stronghold, you have received a bonus 10% boost in EXP gain as well as treasures. So this is a dungeon? I didn't expect that. Usually class advancement quests require a player to do specific things depending on what the class is oriented in. For example, a production-oriented class would have to create a certain item with a specific class rarity depending on the quest's difficulty, and or if the class was warrior/magic oriented the player would have to fight some sort of area boss monster. This quest is taking me into a dungeon, but I guess it's fair considering the reward for this quest will most likely be a rare class. I began walking through the stronghold. It didn't take long before I met the first monsters of this place. They were giants comparable to the ones in the woods by the lake, however, these were covered in thick white fur. The monsters' names appeared in my field of view. Frost Giant. This is such a big dungeon. I've been moving through here for about 30 minutes now. The monsters have gotten much stronger since I first arrived. One thing that has been making me uneasy is the fact that each time I kill one of these giants, when they die, the normal death animation doesn't happen. Instead, they disappear the way an illusion clone would. I've used the cell many times, so I am familiar with its effects. These guys are illusions, nevertheless, they are still strong. They also dropped items of their own, not only weapons but also materials like tooth of a frost giant or liver of the frost giant. It most likely useful for an alchemist, but I will still collected these items since everything has their worth. Right now I am finally in front of the castle doors. This whole time I was only traveling towards the castle, I still hadn't made it. Directly in front of the giant double doors were two frost giants guarding with large sticks in their hands. Through my time here I experimented with many spells to see which one were more effective, and it was obviously fire. I walked causally towards the doors and chanted twin magic, fire lance. This easily got rid of the two giants in front of me. I walked past the disintegrating two frost giants and pushed the door open. As soon as I walked in, a shadow jumped out and attacked me. Its speed was so fast that I only could catch a blur. The attack hit against the infinity barrier, not making contact with me at all. Even if it did, it would simply just go through my body. I moved to rearrange myself so I could get a better view at what was in front of me. As I finally got a clear look on what I was facing, I saw whiskers, a tail, it was on 4 legs. Immediately I understood that this was a cat of some sort, and just like everything else in this place, it was enormous. The creature's name appeared in my field of view as I read it in my head. Tiger Loki's Cat. Chapter 26, Illusion After Illusion. Narrator's POV. Doyle looked closely at the red-colored name that popped in his line of sight. The name icon appeared right above the large cat's head. Tiger Loki's Cat. Loki. Doyle's brain began scavenging, looking for how Loki played a role in any of this. However, the giant cat didn't give Doyle the time he needed, immediately jumping toward him with its sharp claws. Doyle quickly touched the ground, whispering the words delay magic, waterway. As the cat clawed at Doyle's body, it was surprised to see that Doyle's body had disappeared, turning into dark smoke, which was completely different from the first time when it attacked Doyle. After landing in the spot where Doyle's decoy once was, a blue magic circle inclined with gray patterns lit up right under its feet. The cat was quick to see this and jumped up onto the walls. Its long claws embedded itself into the walls, and it allowed the cat to be able to stick to the wall. The magic circle that was on the ground began to widen, and grew to the size of the room, touching all corners. Once it reached the room's floor full capacity, the magic circle dispersed and the room began to be flooded by water. The water grew up to 9 feet inside the room, and the cat climbed higher on the walls since it didn't want to be caught up in it. Doyle was also on the wall, though the cat hadn't noticed him yet due to his invisibility. He had used a gravitational control spell, which allowed him to stand on the wall without issue. He could have instead used the flight spell to get above the water, but this way was much more effective for his next set of plans. Doyle saw that the cat was focused on staying away from the water and took advantage of this opening. He zoomed toward the cat as stealthy as he could and equipped his katana from out of his inventory. After this he moved with precise movements and stabbed one of the cat's paws. This made the cat lift one of its legs off of the wall. Tiger Loki's cat lost -10 HP. The large cat couldn't see Doyle, but it could sense him slightly due to their distance. It then attacked with its injured paw. However, Doyle didn't take any form of damage due to the 6 eyes. Doyle then stabbed another of the cat's paws. Tiger Loki's cat lost -10 HP. This made the cat lose its proper balance and the cat fell into the water, making a big splash. Doyle smiled internally. And now maximize magic, thunder downpour. Doyle raised his arms and a large yellow magic circle appeared over the water that the cat was engulfed in. Seconds later large pillars of thunder plunged into the water. This gave the water an electrifying effect. Roa, the cat roared. Tiger Loki's cat lost -60 HP. Tiger Loki's cat has been paralyzed. Doyle then stopped the ongoing water spell, and the water slowly began to disappear. He then dropped off the wall and began walking toward the cat. The cat was laid out on the ground twitching. As soon as Doyle got within 7 feet away, a blackish aura began to leak from the cat's body. Doyle stopped and jumped back immediately. He already knew what was happening due to his experience in dungeon clearing. Back then, he made sure to get experienced in what would happen and what he would need to do during dungeons. The second phase. I'll try and finish this quickly, he said in a confident tone. Arrogance leaked out of this sentence, mostly because once a boss monster reaches its second stage it was certain that the monster was left with 50% or even less HP. This tactic was to throw off players with a new chain of combos from the boss and also to make it much harder to finish off. However, for Doyle, this was only good news to him. The cat began to grow, the body and leg muscles grew and tightened, making it look more imposing. Its fangs extended and became much longer than before. Shortly after this, the cat began to climb onto its feet. Doyle watched closely as the cat got onto its feet. As the cat got up, it looked toward Doyle. Its cat-like eyes with the slits in the middle were gone. Now its eyes were completely black. "All right then, let's do this," said Doyle as he took a couple of steps back, then blending into the rest of the room. Though Doyle went invisible, the cat didn't move an inch from its location. This was because it was focusing all of its other senses to determine where Doyle was. It stood as still as a statue. "Hey," Doyle's voice whispered in the cat's right ear. This made the cat instantly twist its massive body, clawing directly at the spot the voice sounded from. However, as soon as it attacked, Doyle's voice could be heard giggling on the opposite side of where the cat had attacked. You fell for it, extend magic, crack in the ground. Doyle yelled. Not even a second later the ground split open, creating a fissure that gripped the cat's limbs, entrapping it in that one spot. The broken rocks from the ground clung together, holding the cat in its position. The large cat struggled to try to get out of this trap, however it was no use. It looked up and saw that Doyle, who was directly in front of it, was casually walking up towards it. After a few more attempts to try and escape the bind, the cat lifted its head once more, looking directly at Doyle. After that, it opened its mouth, revealing its large fangs. In its mouth was a black ball. It was continuously growing bigger and bigger. As the ball got as dense as the cat could hold, the ball changed from black to a pure white ball. Seconds later it shot a radiant white beam directly towards Doyle. Meanwhile, Doyle didn't even flinch seeing this occur. He continued to casually walk toward the cat. The white beam engulfed Doyle, yet the attack hadn't even touched him yet. The 6 eyes were in full effect and Doyle was embracing it. Doyle kept his same walking pace, not speeding up, not slowing down. At this moment, Doyle was in control and the cat could do nothing about it. He finally made it within arm's reach of the cat, and the cat was still blasting its beam, which Doyle was standing in. Doyle reached out his arm and opened his hand, and after a couple of seconds, he started laughing loudly like a villain of a show while chanting, "Maximize magic, Vermilion Nova." A magic circle appeared in front of Doyle's hand and glowed, then a pillar beam of black flames gushed out of it, firing at the cat at point-blank range. The black flames penetrated through the white beam that the cat was currently spewing out and hit the cat. This spell was great against a single foe, and since he had the chance, Doyle decided to use it. The spell, Vermilion Nova, was a powerful 9th tier fire attack. Upon making contact with the enemy it does tremendous damage. However, additionally it also had an 100% chance to burn the enemy, resulting in it taking chunks of the enemy's HP even after the initial attack was over. Tiger Loki's cat has been defeated. Doyle watched as the cat did its dying animation. However, that never happened. The cat was in fact an illusion, just like the mobs Doyle had fought coming here. What the fuck? Doyle's POV. What the hell? This makes no sense. This was an illusion this whole time? Is that why Loki was in the cat's name? From what I know about Loki, he was a god of tricks, so if he did have something to do with this I wouldn't be surprised. However, what's throwing me off is the other name that was in the cat's name, Tigera. I have no idea who that is, not have I heard of him in my last life. Still, for me to be fooled by an illusion after all this time. I'm usually quick to know if something is related to illusions since it's my specialty. I'm experienced in illusions, so I rarely have a tough time against them. However, this fooled me hard. I guess that's why it's an advancement class quest for an illusion class. Creak. I looked over toward where I heard the creaking sound and saw that the door that was behind the cat when I entered this castle was now opening up on its own. The door moved slowly, like an ancient door from old times. I could see the dust fall from the opening of the large door. I guess I'll worry about the lore behind this quest in my free time. For now, I still have more to do. I walked towards the door and entered. This castle is big. It took me some time just to get to where I am right now. Along the way, I met more of those illusion giants, which I disposed of easily. The only issue I was having was that this castle is a huge maze. I tried walking through the walls of the maze using my ghostly body, however that just made me even more confused about where I was. It was like each time I walked through a wall the maze was change itself, making me move even further from where I was trying to go. In the end, I used a spell called Lead of Yatagarasu to guide me throughout the maze properly, without any of the tricks I would usually do to speedrun a dungeon. This spell created a 3-legged crow that guided me along the shortest path to the heart of the dungeon, or more specifically the boss room. Now back to the present, I am standing in front of that said boss room. To be honest, I hope there isn't a boss inside of here. I mean, I literally just fought a boss. Well, it was an illusion, but it was also a boss in my opinion. So I'd rather not have to fight another one, since it's not easy coming up with strategies against them, especially with this specific dungeon. This whole place just makes me uneasy. I put my hands on the huge double doors and pushed them open. Unfortunately, what greeted me when I entered was a red name icon, indicating that there was indeed a boss inside. I looked closely at the name icon and read it. King of the Giants, Tiger Loki. You have to be kidding me. In front of me was an enormous giant, much bigger than the other giants I have faced. It was sitting in an arrogant position on a giant throne. The giant was a bluish-white color with slight white fur on its arms and body. It had long large horns that curled upwards, and he had a white beard that matched the color of its fur. As he stared at me while still sitting in his arrogant position, I began trying to find a strategy for how I would beat this guy. First of all, this guy's size is massive. It is on a whole nother level compared to the other giants. Then there's the fact that all the other monsters have been illusions, which he is probably the cause of. I have to be wary of the fact that maybe he can use illusion magic as well. Thirdly, boom, the giant snapped me out of my thoughts with his movement. He grabbed an axe that was big enough for him to hold from on the side of his throne and slammed the tip of it on the ground. This caused the whole room and possibly the whole dungeon to shake, which reminded me of an earthquake. After that, he began moving to a comfortable position for him to stand up. As soon as he stood up on his feet, he roared. As he roared, I could see the snow crystals that were on his white beard fly off and onto the ground. You know what? Fuck a plan, I know what I'm going to do. I quickly equipped my katana. This is a foolproof plan that was constantly used in my last life. Gamers were hated for doing it, but it always got the job done. This plan was called spamming. As soon as the giant began running towards me, I moved my sword to the side of me like I was about to a quick draw similar to samurai. Shortly after, I swung my sword in a horizontal movement, casting the spell World Break. As soon as I swung my sword, a sword opening appeared in front of me, as I had just cut through reality and space. Inside of the opening, I could see stars and possibly other galaxies. Of course, this wasn't real and was only a visual effect in the game. However, as I looked at this, I could only imagine what this would do in the new world. I mean, could I possibly travel outside of the new world to another galaxy or even further than that? Arg. The screams of agony from the giant brought me back to reality. He was on his knee holding onto his stomach, which I had cut very deeply into. I smiled internally. Oh, you're hurt? This is only the beginning? Haha. I began swinging my sword continuously non-stop. World Break. World Break. World Break. I could continuously use this powerful attack because of the other use of my 6 eyes. As I stated before, the item was made to be a defensive item with support abilities. The support abilities obviously played a role in my mana consumption. You see, the 6 eyes provides the user with vast perception and immense brain processing power, allowing them to precisely manipulate the sophisticated powers down to an atomic level. It processes the user's magic energy incredibly efficiently. So much so that the amount of magic energy lost when the user activates a magic spell is infinitesimally close to zero. Due to this, a player with the 6 eyes will never truly run out of mana. I continued to spam the World Break skill until I finally saw what I wanted to see. Tiger Loki has been defeated. Unexpectedly, this boss also never did its dying animation. Instead, it faded away into black smoke, just like the other illusions. I stared at the spot where the giant was previously in shock. What the hell is this? What the hell is going on in this place? I looked around trying to determine if there was another boss room that I had to enter or something. However, nothing was there. This indeed was the real boss room. Clap clap. I reflexively turned to where the clapping was coming from, only to see a familiar old wizard. That was a very entertaining fight, young lad. Why you are. Chapter 27, Rewards. Doyle's POV. In front of me was the wizard-looking old man I had met before in the woods by the lake, Castor. Just like before, he was holding on to his white staff with the same blue wizard gown. That was a very entertaining fight, young lad. His voice sounded proud for some reason, like he was happy about something. I stared at the old man for a second before something clicked in my head and I took a step back. I got in a position to where I could counter-attack if one was thrown at me. Then I asked, Castor, what are you doing in here? The old man looked around, admiring the damage that was done to the large boss room due to my constant attacks against the giant king, and gave a small laugh. Ho ho, I was merely watching the fight. I couldn't help but be impressed by your skill and strength, he said, complimenting me. His voice made me believe he wasn't hostile. However, why else would he be here? I mean, I still haven't even cleared this dungeon, which leads me to believe that he has something to do with this. This did all start with him directing me here anyway. I'm serious. Why are you here? It makes no sense for you to follow me all the way up here. You know, you've been mysterious ever since my first encounter with you, and I've already figured out that you're not a player. So, Castor, who are you really? I stared at him cautiously. Everything pointed at him being the actual boss of this dungeon. It was either that or this guy was a dev that liked to follow players around acting mysterious. The old man watched me for a couple of seconds, then laughed once more. After that, he raised his staff and tapped it against the ground. As soon as he tapped the ground, the whole boss room began to blur and started to change. The room changed completely. Before, it looked old and it wasn't hard to see that the walls were dirty and dusty. There was rubble from broken rocks, not to mention I had damaged the room even more during my fight with the giant king illusion. I looked around at the changes of the room. Now the room wasn't as gloomy as before, it was much cleaner, yet it still looked ancient with a majestic aesthetic tone to it. The large throne that the giant king illusion had sat on was now smaller, for a normal-sized person to be able to sit on. The old man began to walk toward the throne. As he walked there, he replied to my question. I have to say, you are quite the cautious person. Not every player would do such research on me, though I guess that's to be expected from such a skillful person. He paused, finally reaching the throne, then he sat down on the throne and continued. You are correct. I am not a player, sorry for deceiving you, but I was just playing my role. Allow me to introduce myself once more without any lies. As he spoke, his wizardly appearance began to fade and his true appearance revealed itself. I am the Master of Illusions, also known as Skrimir, and I am the Lord of Yotenheim, or more specifically the Administrator. It is a pleasure to finally meet you properly, without any tricks, he said proudly. His voice was still the same, sounding like an old man. However, his appearance had now changed into something else. His skin had changed to a blue color, similar to the giants I have been fighting. However, he wasn't as big as them, most likely because of some sort of spell he is using. His hair had grew long, touching his shoulders along with his long beard. He wore some sort of crown with jewels embedded in its center. He also had other sets of jewelry on his wrist, arms, neck. He was wearing purple robes with golden designs embellished on them. Thinking back, I do remember in the novel of Overlord, that there were world administrators of each world. They were NPCs that were in charge of administration in their respective worlds. If I remember correctly, the one that governed in Helheim was encountered by Mominga and his guild during their dungeon raid for Nazareth. I honestly didn't think that I would have to meet one personally for a quest, but this guy seems informed and aware of us players. This leads me to believe that the administrators might have some sort of AI intelligence above the regular and boss monsters. As I looked at Skramir, I realized that I had seen his face somewhere before. During my time in the White Room for the meeting of world champions, 9 portraits were hanging on the walls. Now that I'm looking at Skramir, I remember that his face was one of them. It's hard to forget the blue skin he has that was emphasized in the portrait. So that's who those people were inside of those pictures that were hanging on the wall. I mumbled. Skramir heard my mumbles and spoke. Portraits, he asked. It's nothing. So, you're one of the administrators. You are also the person I was tasked with finding to complete my quest. The way you speak makes me believe you already know of us administrators, but yes, I am Skramir, the one you are supposed to find, he said. I walked a bit closer to where he was standing and then spoke seriously. If that's the case, are we supposed to fight? I'm here for a class advancement quest, so I'm not leaving without my reward. Skramir moved his head and rested it lazily in his hand that was leaning on the handle of the throne. He seemed to be examining me. Ho ho, there's no need to worry. My role here is not to fight with you. I am merely here to reward you for your hard work, though even if you were to fight me, you would not win as you are now, he stated confidently. Honestly, I had that same impression. Though I do believe in my strength a lot in most cases, I get the vibe that this guy is much stronger than me, even with the 6 eyes. Besides, I'm only at level 94 right now, and even when I think back to the novel, it clearly stated that when Ainz Ooal met with the Lord of Helheim, one of the guild members was considering using one of the 20 type world items to eliminate him. His strength most likely is comparable to a world enemy's. If that's the case, now that I've met you, what exactly do I do now? I asked. Well, you've completed the quest already and impressed me while doing it. I see no reason for me not to reward you, he said. Seconds later he continued while raising his hand, making some sort of virtual window appear. This here is your reward. It's a very rare class that is hard to obtain. You're only able to receive this due to your circumstances. After he said this, a virtual window popped up in front of me showing the class that I just received. Phantasmal Conjurer. One of the top rarest classes that exist in Yggdrasil, purposely created and designed to only be held by a small number of players. This class is only suitable for players with the ghost race who have dived deeply into the racial class void entity. Only players who are truly dedicated to the arts of illusion can enter it. With this class, a player completely ignores the concepts of reality and fiction. If one individual's perception of reality is different to another's, chaos will inevitably ensue, and at that point does it matter what true reality is. Class requirements. Must have ghost race. Must have at least void entity level 4. Must have all illusion classes leveled to their max. Must be level 95. As I read the requirements of the class, my excitement ceased immediately. I'm not level 95 yet. Would this mean I miss out on the chance of getting this class? I looked up at Skramir slowly, drowning in anxiety. I'm not level 95 yet, but I'm only 1 level away from it. If you could wait just a couple more minutes while I go and kill off a couple more monsters. There is no need for that. Your worries are for nothing. You are indeed at the required level. I just need to do this. He interrupted while snapping his fingers. As soon as he snapped his fingers, I received a notification. Ding. The illusion class advancement quest has been complete. Level 94, rightward arrow level 95. Nice. I had forgotten about the quest. Seeing this, I smiled internally, then I looked back up towards Skramir and thanked him. There is no reason to thank me, this is all because your hard work. With that I was able to equip the class. This class reminded me of Mominga's Eclipse class, with its hardcore requirements. Regardless, I'm happy with this outcome. Chapter 28, Betrayal. 3 months later *. Narrator's POV. Swish. The crunching sound of the autumn-colored leaves could be heard as a group of 3 ran through the woods of abnormally tall trees. The trees were so tall that if a player was not flying, they wouldn't be able to see where the trees stopped in the sky. It would seem as if they were endless. As the group of 3 ran, they continuously looked back as if something was chasing them. The magic caster, who played the leader role for this group, turned around once more to get a better view of what they were running from, but he couldn't see anything. Looks like we lost them. I don't see them anymore, said the archer. He was of the elf race, dressed in green leathers that protected him from spells up to tier 6. That might be the case, but let me make sure. I'd rather be safe than sorry, stated the magic caster as he stopped and began casting a spell. Mass Compass, he screamed. This spell, unlike its inferior counterpart, would locate multiple players as long as they were within a certain distance. As the magic caster chanted the spell, a wave of light stretched far and wide, searching for any players within its vicinity. After a couple of seconds, the other player that was with them spoke. So, do you see him? Did we lose him? This player was a human woman who didn't hold any weapons. Instead, she had golden gauntlets on her hands. She was a monk. The magic caster ignored the woman and focused more on his surroundings, looking for anything that moved. However, he couldn't find anything. No matter how far hard he looked, he couldn't pick up on anything. This is strange. The guy was right behind us a couple of seconds ago. It makes no sense how we could have lost him. This has to be a trap of some sort, he thought. The magic caster then finally spoke his mind. Something's wrong. We need to keep moving. You see him? Asked the archer with a bit of nervousness. No, That's the reason I'm saying we need to keep moving. It makes no sense why he isn't being picked up by the spell at all, he stated. Are you sure he didn't just give up on chasing us? Asked the monk. The magic caster looked at her then shook his head. Even if that's the case we should continue. At least until we reach the city mainland. If we encounter him or anyone who is as strong as him again we're done for. Staying inside of these woods, we're basically sitting ducks. Well, are you still unable to teleport? Since the guy is gone, then you should be able to teleport now, right? The monk asked curiously. You're right. Let me try it now. The magic caster then chanted the spell Greater Teleportation, however as soon as the magic circle appeared it suddenly broke and disappeared. Looks like I still can't use the spell. We have to continue on foot, the magic caster grumbled. Although the facial expressions could not be seen, it was obvious by the low groans of the elf and monk that they were bothered by this. They had been running for 20 minutes without break and were tired. They are all a part of a guild called World Searcher, and as the name suggests they are a guild who specializes in searching and exploring the 9 worlds for the unknown. Their group had been put in charge of searching a dungeon that one of the higher-ups had learned about and clear it. Before it had been more of them in this group, but after challenging a dungeon and beating it, they received the item. This item was not just any item, though. They had been lucky enough to find a world item called Greya. Right after exiting the dungeon, tons of players were waiting on them outside. It was an ambush. This meant that someone had leaked some information about their mission. During the fight against the ambushers, they lost over 7 other teammates, and in the end they had to run away in order to stay alive without losing the world item. Now back to the present. With no other choice, the group of 3 resumed running towards the mainland city of Yotenheim. Every one of them was at least level 70. It was one of the reasons they were tasked with clearing the dungeon, so while running they were moving quite fast. As they passed a couple more trees, some bushes on the right and left of them shook, which made each of them stop and jump in a defensive position. Suddenly 2 assassins rushed in front of them. The assassins moved so fast that they appeared to be teleporting. Damn, looks like they were in front of us waiting for us to come in this direction the whole time, said the magic caster in a grim tone. I can't allow them to get the world item. Before he could even finish his thought, a notification appeared in his line of sight. You have been critically injured. You have lost -70 HP. Warning, you are poisoned. He looked down at his body and realized that a purple dagger was stabbed into his chest area. He quickly swung his arm, casting the spell Lucifer's Touch, however he missed as the elf that was on his side jumped back. How could you do this? Screamed the monk in anger. She knew that there was a traitor that leaked their mission, however she believed that it was one of the higher UPS instead, not one of her own teammates. I should have known. You goddamn snake, screamed the magic caster. The elf began to laugh loudly as he walked over to the assassin's side. Ha 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 ha, man, it's been fun running with you idiots. However, since that item has been found, we are gonna need it, sorry, he said, giggling. The magic caster quickly drank one of the antidotes that he had in his inventory and then tried to drink a potion, however as soon as he pulled it out. Ah, now we can't have that, can we? Waterlands. A voice that came from behind them shouted. Before the magic caster could drink the potion, he was attacked from behind, losing even more HP. You have lost -20 HP. The monk and magic caster duo turned around to see 3 more enemies, however the player towards the front was someone who was now pretty popular. He was a player named Zechariah, one of the founding members of another guild called Mercenary Magicians Guild. This guild was one of the guilds that was up on the rise in the rankings along with World Searcher. It consisted of only magic casters, with almost 1/4 of their guild having the class World Disaster. Although this guild wasn't a player-killing guild, just as their name suggests, they would take on mercenary work for other players for certain compensation. And the man in front of him was one of the more powerful among them. Zechariah? You don't know what you are doing. We are part of the World Searcher Guild. Do you seriously want to start a war? Screamed the monk. Zechariah stared at them quietly for a couple of seconds before giggling slightly. Pftahem, excuse me, but why would I be afraid of the World Searcher Guild? You guys wouldn't even be a challenge in a guild war. The other 2 magicians on the side of him began to laugh, agreeing with him. As much as the monk wanted to refute, she couldn't. She knew that he was right. Although their guild had a lot of members and was even reaching the top 20 on the leaderboards, they were considered weak in terms of strength. The guild leaderboards took a lot into effect when ranking the guilds, so it wasn't safe to determine who was stronger based on their rank alone. The monk and her companion grew silent. They couldn't figure out anything to stop these 2 guilds from attacking them. They knew that they couldn't win if it came down to a fight, yet they also could run or teleport away. The elf who was with the assassins walked closer with his hand out and said, hand over the world item. If you do that, we won't spawn kill you for any of your own items. Just tell the higher UPS that a mistake happened, what the... Before he could finish his sentence, he along with everyone else noticed that the tree surroundings was changing. The environment began to morph into a pitch black color. Zechariah was quick to notice what was happening. Is this an illusion? Chapter 29, Overpowered. Narrator's POV. The group of players all looked around at the changing of their surroundings. What is this? Asked Zechariah, analyzing the environment. The once tall trees that were full of green leaves were now changing into crooked, leafless lumps of black wood. The sunlight that was once present was nowhere to be seen and the area became dark and foggy. What the hell is this, Zechariah? Are you doing this? Grumbled the elf nervously. No, this isn't us. We didn't bring any magic casters who use illusion spells. Zechariah replied. His guild specialized in magic casting and a few of the members of the guild also used illusions, so it wasn't hard for him to guess that this was something illusion related. Yet, he hadn't brought any of those players with him, so he wasn't sure what was happening. "We paid you to help us, so do something about this," yelled the elf. He didn't want anything to stop him from getting his hands on his very first world-class item. The two remaining members of World Searcher were also confused. Nevertheless, they were relieved for the distraction taking the pressure off of themselves. Then all of a sudden, a voice boomed out. This is fun, 3 guilds having a dispute, and there was even a betrayal. If only this was also added to the show, things would have been interesting, said the unknown voice. The voice seemed to have come from all directions, so no one could accurately pinpoint where it could have came from. Zechariah looked around in confusion. Where is this voice coming from? And what was he talking about? The voice had mentioned a show, which didn't make sense to Zechariah. However, that wasn't important right now. He had to find the person behind this before they screwed up the mission. He immediately alerted the magic casters that were accompanying him, telling them to help him conjure up a spell that would allow them to distinguish reality from illusion. Apparently, however, the elf couldn't be bothered to wait. "Who are you?" he screamed. He was annoyed with the situation, yet he still felt on edge. The scale of this illusion seemed too big. He was seriously starting to doubt Zechariah's idea of this being an illusion. The assassins that were with the elf secretly began using their limited assassin class techniques that was specifically for tracking a player's movement and location. They made sure to use silent magic for this as to not alert the other party. Meanwhile, the 2 members of World Searcher used this distraction to get in contact with their guild. While all the others were preoccupied, they silently messaged their guild. Regardless of what happened, they could not allow the world item to get stolen or lost. They had put too many resources into finding it. Besides, it was a world item. Their guild would definitely experience a huge influx of prosperity. Crack. Crack. Zechariah was quick to notice the cracking sounds coming from the ground below them. However, he had already started casting the anti-illusion spell with his guildmates, so he couldn't move at the moment. Soon the dried-up roots from the hollow trees pierced from out of the ground, shocking everyone. Shortly after, the roots charged toward everyone, including the 2 players from World Searcher. No one was safe. The elf quickly equipped his dagger and began slicing every root that came his way. Alas, there were too many and got overwhelmed. The black roots tightly wrapped him, locking him in place. There was nothing he could do. He looked to his left where his subordinates were. However, they were also wrapped up. At this point, no one believed this was an illusion anymore. Perhaps they had entered the territory of an overpowered area boss? He took a glance at his surroundings. Zechariah had already gotten interrupted, unbalancing the spell and cancelling his anti-illusion spell. Now he was left fighting against the large black roots. The elf began to sweat internally. If they really did enter and aggro a powerful area boss, then they would all die and lose items, artifacts, and weapons. This included the world item Greya. He had all but forgotten about the unknown voice he heard earlier. His mind was too preoccupied thinking about what he will lose if he'd die here. The duo from the World Searcher Guild fought hard, enduring even longer than the elf and his assassins. However, even they were defeated after roots lifted up from underneath them, grabbing their legs. Seeing that everyone else was incapacitated, Zechariah grew tired of this and decided that he would leave before he too was stuck here. He could easily teleport away from here since he was the one who stopped the other from teleporting away. Besides, he was different. He didn't have to worry about a world item. His guild already had one. Running away was okay for him. He and his guild could come back here later and face whatever creature was attacking them and take the world item back. Suddenly he remembered his subordinates were also stuck here, but they were merely members of the guild. He was a founder. Surely they'd understand. He quickly cast the spell Greater Teleportation, yet as soon as it was cast, it broke right after. Then the surrounding echoed with the unknown voice once again, this time with a more mocking tone. "Sorry Zechariah, you don't have the right to leave without my permission." In front of Zechariah was a formless black shadow with crystal blue eyes. Doyle's POV. "Sorry Zechariah, you don't have the right to leave without my permission," I said mockingly. Did he really think he could simply leave because I hadn't showed myself? I was just enjoying the entertainment they were giving me. It has been such a long time since I've came to this game world and my boredom had reached its peak. Over 5 years have flew by already, officially that is. For me personally it has been far longer than that due to my time difference. I have completed lost count of how many days, weeks, or years have passed. I only knew 5 years passed due to the in-game time that sits right in front of my interface. I quickly wrapped Zechariah with the roots of the trees and walked closer, arrogantly placing my hand on his head. A dog shouldn't run from its owner. Especially since I haven't been entertained enough, I said boredly. My strength had grew leaps and bounds over these 5 years, so facing these guys with even 20% of my strength would have been overkill. Saying this, I pulled up my status out of habit. IGN, Doyle. Gender, male. Race, ghost, heteromorphic. Level, 100+. HP, 97. MP, 100+. PHYATK, 100+. PHYDEF, null. Agility, 100+. Mag ATK, 100+. Mag Def, 100+. Resist, 100+. Special, 100+. Total stats, 1028. Ghost, 15. Wraith Lord, 10. Phantasmal Eternal 5. Void Entity 5. Illusionist, 15. Sage, 10. Phantasmal Conjurer, 5. Illusion Expert, 10. Weapon Master, 10. Arcanist, 10. Craftsman, 10. Great Sage, 10. Spectral Ruler, 5. World Champion, 5. Gs. I'm a monster. Chapter 30, Trading a World Item for a World Item. Narrator's POV. The black roots coiled around Zechariah. He struggled and failed repeatedly to break out. There was nothing he could do. He peeked up at the unknown being that had its hand placed on his head. It was drowned in black fog, the aura it leaked was overbearing, and the only thing visible with the fog was the two crystal blue lights that appeared to be eyes. The group of incarcerated players all had their eyes glued on what the being's next move would be. No one knew whether it was a monster, NPC, or a player. It was impossible to guess, especially with how unpredictable the devs could be. Zechariah had been given negative status effects with just a touch of the hand. Then the shadow figure spoke. "Alright, how about this? If you guys can beat this guy then I'll let you go," he said. Saying this, the fog around the left side of his body lifted and formed into a hand. The hand that appeared was adorned by 5 other rings each on every single finger. However, the ring that glowed was the one on the index finger. It was a lemon yellow color, and the face of the ring had a gold crystal that was designed as a lightning bolt. Shortly after the ring glowed, a giant complex magic circle appeared on the ground next to the shadowed figure. "That's a summoning circle," one of Zechariah's mages blurted. Even without the mage saying anything, everyone already knew. Soon a giant monster began to materialize. It had bat-like wings supported by 4 bat-like phalanges extending from its wrists, and an additional 3 phalanges that extend from the sides of its torso. All the phalanges end in blade-like tips that emerge from the wing membrane. 3 heads twirled around looking at the players hungrily, each head with a crown of 10 horns. As it fully materialized, it was standing at a whopping 57 meters, 190 feet, off the ground. The giant monster bent down, all the heads leaning in close for a heat pat. The players around had grew flabbergasted by the size of the monster because it resembled something in the game that was incredibly rare to beat, even more tame. D-Dragon. Zechariah was petrified. They were going to die. Not only was the unknown being overwhelming powerful, but the pet that he summoned was a dragon, one of the most powerful species in Yggdrasil. "Wait, this isn't fair," screamed the elf. He wasn't stupid. How would they survive fighting a dragon? And based on the size, this dragon was most likely an ancient dragon, which were even stronger than normal dragons. The shadow figure laughed. "Haha, fair? This is by far the fairest thing I could have possibly did." He teased and continued. "If you were to fight me, you'd lose immediately. You aren't even level 100 yet. Besides, aren't I giving you a chance to live right now?" The shadow figure patted the dragon while saying something inaudible for the other to hear. Then he turned around and looked at the 2 players from World Searcher. With the flick of his hand, they were dragged to him by the black roots. "I'll be having a chat with these people, so you guys have fun with Ghidorah," he said, giggling in the process. All of a sudden, the black shadow figure and the members of World Searcher dematerialized out of the environment, almost like they wasn't even real in the first place. Immediately after the unknown being disappeared, the roots dropped and all the players equipped their strongest weapons. Zechariah decided to take charge of the group, even if he had little faith. If they didn't fight back, they would die regardless. "Everyone fast as many enhancements as you can on yourself. Since we have assassins, they will move up as DPS, as mages will stay in the back." Looking over, he saw the elf still standing there doing nothing. He walked up and pushed the elf to awake him from his stupor. "You goddamn idiot, wake up. If you don't pull yourself together, I will personally kill you." The elf looked at Zechariah and nodded slightly. He couldn't see any facial expressions, but the voice that echoed in his ear was dead serious. "Roar!" The sound of a gigantic roar reverberated across the land and shook the ground. Electricity buzzed, zapping through the environment. Ghidorah's 3 heads was cloaked in electricity. It opened its mouth and a magic circle formed, condensing mana from the surroundings. Doyle's POV. Meanwhile. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I said if you hand over the world item you guys just received, I will give you another in return," I answered in boredom. I blankly looked at the duo as they continued throwing questions at me, then threw my hand up signaling for them to stop. "Listen, I know that you guys will work hard to find this item, which is why I'm offering another for it in return. You guys didn't do any harm to me or annoy me in any kind of way, so I'm trying to help out. I could easily take it from you, but I'm giving you another option. You have no choice but to give it to me." The 2 looked at each other hesitantly, then back at me. Fortunately, these guys were smart. They finally took out the world item I wanted and presented it to me. World-class item Greya. Greya, a item of the highest tier possible in Yggdrasil. It is said that the owner of this item won't have any trouble discovering the rest of the other world items. This item has the ability to guide a player to discover the secrets of Yggdrasil. Holding this item, the player can locate other world-class items that are nearby. After reading the info about the item, I looked up at the duo who were panicky and twitchy. Sigh, these guys are irritating to be around. I dug into my inventory, pulling out a caloric stone. "Here, this is also a world item. Take it. Thank you for being understanding." "Thank you, but are you sure you can just give this to us?" asked the girl out of the 2. "Oh right, to them it seems like I just easily handed over a top tier item. Whatever, I get one of these every couple of weeks, but they don't need to know that." Ghidorah has earned EXP. Ghidorah has earned EXP. Ghidorah has earned EXP. Ghidorah has earned. Oh, seems like Ghidorah is finished as well. Ding. A message? I looked at my messages. New message from Lucifer. Chapter 31, Meeting My Idol. Doyle's POV. New message from Lucifer. Glancing at the notification, I looked back at the 2 guild members of World Searcher. We're done here now, you guys can freely leave. Don't worry, the place you were in before was all an illusion, and you can freely use teleportation again. The 2 stared at me blankly, before the mage replied abruptly. Oh, right, thanks for that. We'll get out of your hair now. However, right before they got the chance to leave, the monk grabbed him, stopped, and looked back at me. Wait, we never got your name, do you mind telling us? I didn't say anything, I looked at her. From their point of view, my appearance was something that no player could recreate, so they probably thought I was an area boss or some other boss monster. Seeing me staring at her silently, she started to panic. Of course, I don't mean any harm, it would just be beneficial for you. The guild would properly compensate you if I and my subordinate told the higher UPS that you helped us when we were ambushed. I interrupted her before she could even finish. Nah, that's all good. I don't need the compensation, the world item we traded for was already compensation enough. If anything, you guys need to worry about finding the snake that's in your guild. Hearing my words, they both recoiled. I could tell they were furious, of course. I couldn't see their facial expressions, but have been in this game world for so long you get a knack for these kinds of things. He's right, we need to go inform the guild leader personally, anyone else could be the leaker, the mage said seriously. Then the monk turned around and nodded. I wasn't heed as they took a couple of steps and then teleport out of my sight. As soon as I was sure that they were gone, I deactivated my spectral ruler form, and my appearance changed to its normal ghostly appearance. I decided to hide my identity when I approached that situation because I didn't know whether I would have had to take Greya by force. And since I'm on good terms with the World Searcher Guild, I didn't want to break our relationship. Without them I wouldn't have found the 4 world items I have in my possession right now. I looked to my left and lifted my arm. Deactivate illusion. Soon I'm that area. The nice forest of tall trees and autumn leaves changed to broken trees that had been burned from electrical attacks. The ground had tons of craters, making the floor resemble a black moon. Electricity buzzed and zipped unstably. Standing in the center of all that destruction was Ghidorah, tall and giant. His 3 heads stood still in a posture waiting on me to give my next command. I walked over and lifted my arm, then balled my fists to reveal the 4 rings on my fingers. What was the command again? Oh, right, I remember. Return. I cringed as I said this. Every time I sent one of my dragons back into their ring, it always made me think of a certain monster catching anime in my old world. Now that I think about that, it was my dad who made me hate that show. I remember he used to always say how stupid it was. Thinking about this made me annoyed, so I looked toward the messages that I got from Lucifer. Lucifer, yo, Doyle. Lucifer, hello, you there. Lucifer, if you don't reply I will spam you. I can literally see that you are online, right? Just like always, so reply to my message you %##%. Lucifer is typing. Look at this idiot, does he not have any patience? He always does this whenever I take a while to answer. I'm not his girlfriend. Look, his cursing even got censored. Ha. I finally decide to reply. Doyle, can't you tell I'm busy? Why do you always spam? Lucifer, you? Busy? Like hell you are, you're always on the game 24/7. Doyle, whatever, what do you want? Lucifer, you don't know? Remember Touch Me said he had a newbie that he wanted to introduce you to. Oh right, he did say something like that. I've been so proactive I forgot. Doyle, yeah I remember. Where is he right now anyway? Still in Helheim. Lucifer, yeah he's even renting one of the buildings there. I'll send you the cords, I'm gonna get off for the night. I have to get up early tomorrow. After getting the coordinates I tell Lucifer bye, though he's a bit of a pain sometimes, he still is someone I consider a friend, and you have to tell your brothers good night. Lucifer and Touch Me have also gotten pretty close. I have to say, watching him briefly in the show and reading about him, it was stated that Touch Me was good, but now that I've met him I can truly say with certainty he is a decent guy through and through. Even during the times that we had, I'd help him farm some mobs for materials, and even then, he'd always help those who needed help, specifically the heteromorphic players. It's honestly been a while since I've seen him, so it will be nice to chat with him again. I casually cast greater teleportation and disappear from my current location, appearing at the checkpoint in Helheim. Then I followed the coordinates that Lucifer sent me, which lead me to a large building that had 2 floors. It was styled as a Gothic mansion. Entering, I quickly let my presence known. Yo, Touch Me, where are you? It's me, Doyle. Lucifer reminded me that you had someone you wanted me to meet. The house was quiet for a second until I heard a familiar justice-filled voice, kinda like the superheroes from old school movies and TV shows. Doyle, how have you been, man? We're upstairs. I walk up the stairs and the first thing that catches my sight is someone I have seen over 100 times. Not in real life or in person, I've seen him in the manga and anime, and I've even read about him in novels. He was geared in old and teared up brown cloth, however, his shiny white skull and pointy bone fingers were enough for me to guess the guest Touch Me wanted to meet. It's nice to see you, Doyle. This is Mominga. I just met him a couple of days ago in the game, but he's a really good guy. I think I might fanboy. Chapter 32, Mominga. Doyle's POV. It's nice to see you, Doyle. This is Mominga. I just met him a couple of days ago in the game, but he's a really good guy, Touch Me said, pointing in the direction of Mominga. I remained silent for a second, trying to hide my excitement. I didn't want to come off as weird, and I'm sure Touch Me would easily hear the sudden difference in my voice since he knew me well enough at this point. But still, this was it. I was actually meeting the bony sorcerer, the real Mominga, who wasn't just a fictional character being played by a voice actor. I moved closer, lifting my hand for a handshake, then I spoke. Hey, I'm a friend of Touch Me. We met during the meeting with the other world champions. You can call me Doyle. Nice to meet you. Wait, you're a world champion as well? Geez, now I really feel like a noob being here, haha. Anyway, it's nice to meet you. Saying this, the skeleton also extended his bony hand, shake mine. Touch Me walked closer to us, the platinum armor he won from the tournament reflecting the surroundings. It glistened each time light landed on it. He put his hand on his waist, resembling a certain superhero with a giant S on his chest. Oh no, I can't compare to Doyle. Not only is he a world champion, but he's also the #1 player of Yggdrasil at the moment. Hearing this, I felt a bit embarrassed. Getting complimented so much always just seems weird for some reason. I couldn't even see the facial expression, however for some reason he seemed proud as he spoke. Suddenly Mominga asked me a question. Hey is Doyle your real name? You don't really see players using names like Doyle in games nowadays. I felt sort of embarrassed hearing this question. After Malice roasted my gamertag at the gathering of world champions, I gained small insecurity about it. I quickly shot back, Doyle isn't my real name, it's simply a name I chose to use for Yggdrasil. I wanted a simple yet meaningful name, and if you look at the meaning behind the name you'd find that the name is actually really. I stopped talking after the empty stares landed on me. The silence was loud, I can't even see their facial expressions, however, I get the feeling that I sound like a nerd to them. Regardless, it's not my name, it's just a user I state one last time. Soon Touch Me breaks the awkward silence. I see. Well, you wouldn't believe how I met Mominga, here. Oh, but I actually do. I know how you met him, I know how he becomes one of your close friends in-game. I also know how he and you will become founders of Ainz Ooal. Geez, I sound like a stalker. How did you meet him then? I ask, feigning ignorance so as to not be weird. It'd be suspicious if I told him that I actually knew all of this, so I had to act like a normal person who didn't know anything. Soon Touch Me started to talk again. You know how the human pikers are always targeting us, heteromorphic players. I was passing by and saw a couple of them ganging up on him. Of course, after I saw this I had to step in and help a fellow heteromorphic player out. Then after talking to him found out he was a decent guy, so I added him as a friend and invited him on dungeon runs with me. I wanted to introduce you and Lucifer to him like a week ago, but you guys have been moving solo for some time now, so I didn't have a chance to. I nodded. Yeah, I've had to deal with pikers myself during my solo grinding, though I made easy work of them. Touch Me looked me up and down. Speaking of your solo grinding, how strong did you get since the last time we went farming together? Internally, a smile cracked. I'd been waiting on someone to ask about this. I'd become overpowered after all. Well, you probably can guess that I'm already maxed leveled due to my cash shop items, but that's not all. While I was in Muspelshame, I somehow earned the world enemy class, though you may not know about it since it's not public info. Long story short, although I'm maxed leveled, my stats are those of a player higher than level 100. I had indeed earned the world enemy class after fighting and killing a certain world boss that inhabited Muspelshame. I gained a world item that gave me the status 7 Deadly Sins, cursed, which in turn earned me the world enemy class. What I was confused about was what happened after I gained the class. It evolved, changing its title to Spectral Ruler instead, giving me a new form, which I used when I helped the 2 World Searcher members when they were attacked. My guess is that it was a gift from the devs. It doesn't give me any other spells or skills, it was simply for cosmetics. Regardless, I've become more powerful than I planned. Touch Me laughed heartily, then patted Mominga on his broad bony shoulders. See, I told you he is a beast. I can't believe there are still rumors about Shadow taking your spot. I don't think anyone can beat you 1-on-1 now, hell, maybe even 3-on-1, haha. Mominga just stared at me silently. It seems that my idol is going to be looking up to me from now on. It feels good to have others admiring me now. Anyway, now that you guys have met each other, how about we run some dungeons for old time's sakes? We should start playing together more often. Us heteromorphic players have to stick together, you know. I smiled internally. This means that soon Nine's own goal will be formed soon. I can't lie, coming here after such a traumatic past life wasn't as good as I thought at first, but now that it's almost time for one of the main central points in the timeline, it's definitely going to get fun. Everything is coming together nicely. Sure, let's do it. I can even give Mominga some Chapter 33, Evolution to Nine's own goal. Narrator's POV. Weeks had passed since the first time Doyle had been introduced to Mominga. Over that period of time, the skeleton sorcerer also got to meet Lucifer, which he felt apprehensive about at first due to Lucifer's attitude and habits. Yet, anyone who is exposed to something for so long, they will inevitably adapt, and weird things that once felt odd began to feel like the norm. The group had been running dungeons, only when all of them were free and online at the same time, of course. Everyone wasn't always available to play Yggdrasil all the time. Mominga and Lucifer had jobs that they had to attend. Not to mention Touch Me, he had a job and a family of his own which kept him away from the game. The only one who continued to play the game without stop was Doyle. Previously, the others, Touch Me, Lucifer, and Mominga had developed a habit of meeting up within the waiting area to chat and laugh about in-game and IRL events. However, Doyle was continuously getting left out due to his inability to join the waiting area. Unfortunately, in order to join the waiting area, a player would first have to be logged out of Yggdrasil. Once they would log in, they would be sent to a hub, or in other words, waiting area, which was private or public depending on the player's preference. Players had the option of waiting within the hub without having to automatically join into the game, and within this hub players were able to send invites to and from their waiting area, but this was only for players that were added as a friend within the game. Due to Doyle's circumstances, he could not log out at all, which meant he wouldn't have the option to join a waiting area. In reality, the group changed their way of having these friendly meetups. Instead, now they would meet with the rental mansion that Touch Me had been renting. Over time, Mominga and Doyle brought up the idea of everyone contributing to getting a larger and more high-end mansion for the group as a whole. With the gold that Touch Me, Doyle, and Lucifer had coming in as their income from within Yggdrasil, it was easy to afford a much better meetup spot. In all honesty, the group didn't even do much grinding. Everyone other than Doyle had been playing for fun, spending most of their time when online just having friendly conversations and laughs together. It was the perfect friend group. For better or worse, the group began to grow. Touch Me's influence on everyone made the group almost seem like a vigilante organization, helping out other heteromorphic players who were being targeted by human and demi-human pikers who were repeatedly hunting down heteromorphics in order to claim some strong job classes, which required piking a certain number of heteromorphic beings for entry. The group of friends were only so big and could only do so much when it came to stopping the in-game racism. Due to their friend group's small numbers, they were only be able to travel to worlds such as Helheim, Nilfheim, and Muspelheim, helping out their fellow heteromorphic players. Due to this, Helheim, Nilfheim, and Muspelheim became the popular worlds for heteromorphic players, where they would go when entering Yggdrasil. Not only that, because certain worlds had different biomes where only certain races would be able to safely live, this decreased the amount of human pikers and spawn killings. Players could still enter these worlds by just equipping the right gear that allowed them to safely enter the different temperatures and biomes. However, it decreased the racism nonetheless. The growing group gained members like Nishiki Enrei, Warrior Takemikazuchi, Ancient One, and even Amanama Hitosu, all having similar goals and interests. After growing to the point where there were already 9 members within the group, Doyle was the one to suggest the group becoming a clan. "We have grown past the point where we can call this just a friend group now. How about we start our own clan?" he said. Most of the group agreed with his logic, especially Touch Me. It almost felt to him like Doyle had been reading his mind due to how timely he brought up the idea. Nevertheless, the group ended up adopting the name Nine's own goal. This symbolized the 9 members of the clan each pursuing the same goal, and it sounded nice to roll of the tongue to Mominga. Without warning, the clan became even more like a meeting, with the clan members setting up dates for each member to be online to be made as conferences for communication. It was done so to set up a weekly organized sharing of information and requests for help from member to member. Once the discussion is over, they would come together and form a party before then trying to carry out such a request for the sake of their clansmen. That said, new information among members did not come easily, as the only time they ever get to explore and play Yggdrasil was during their free hours. Doyle made it his job to be Loki when he brought up original ideas to the conferences. He didn't want to seem suspicious when it came to forcing the future he already knew about from the Overlord anime and novel. When the meetings took place, he would sit back for a while, allowing the clan to talk and add in their ideas and suggestions. However, if no one brought up the things that were needed for the proper future, he always suggested these ideas himself. Now in the present time, the clan were planning a course of actions that would lead them to attaining their very first world-class item. Of course, Doyle already knew what world item it was that they were aiming for. However, he never made it known. Just like always, he played ignorant of the outcome which would result of the clan's actions. He was like a shadow that was giving a guiding hand without the notice of the rest of the clansmen. Through the countless conferences the clan held, they had gathered information regarding a world-class item's whereabouts. Apparently there was a hidden boss that dropped a world item within Vanheim. Chapter 34, Death Count and Memories of the Past. Doyle's POV. Inside a gothic mega mansion that was being rented by Nine's own goal, I was sitting at a conference table. I had to admit, it was a nicely decorated table, and it was long enough for all 18 members that were in the clan at the moment. Yet, when I think back to the time I got to see the table that was present within the tomb of Nazareth, it can't even compare. Nevertheless, we used this room as a meeting room since it had the most space and was already furnished with this long table and other things when I purchased it. That's right, I purchased it. Not with my own gold, of course. I had the clan members contribute their share along with myself. However, I was the one in charge of buying the mansion since I brought up the idea. Can you fault me? Our members were growing so much that the last mansion we were renting was much too small for all of us. To be quite honest, I have been giving a lot of ideas to advance the clan. Unlike the novel and anime, there was no leader of Nine's own goal. Despite that, Touch Me, and Punidomo were basically the leaders ourselves since we made most of the plans for the clan. At the long table in front of me, there were also 2 others who sat here, Ulbert Alon Odal, the demon of great disaster, and Bellriver, the big eater. The 2 had been discussing the update patch that had come out earlier. The update came with a few tweaks and new content. Did any of you guys see the death counter that they added to the game? Asked the demon goat as he tapped the table with the 4 claws that were connected to his gloves. Bellriver grunted. Ah, yeah, I've seen the new features that came with the update, and to be quite honest, it's useless and embarrassing. Albert laughed heartily. Haha, of course, you'd say that. You've died almost 300 times since you've been playing. I also giggled at this. Bellriver was usually reserved and prudent, so seeing him complain was always a funny sight. I just don't see the reasoning in making that info public. This is a violation of privacy. Bellriver stated as he slammed his balled fist into the table. This caused Albert to laugh, even more. Then he looked at me. Oh yeah, Doyle, you're the #1 player. I wonder how many times have you died. You don't mind if I check it out, do ya? He asked cheekily. I shrugged my shoulders nonchalantly. Personally, I already knew how many deaths I had in total. How could I forget? No matter how long I had been inside of this game world, the pain I had to endure in order to earn the ghost race was deeply ingrained into me. Albert pulled up a digital menu and began scrolling and tapping, moving his way to the death counter window. Bellriver also leaned over, curious to see how many deaths I had accumulated over all my gameplay time. Soon a window popped up with my info. IGN, Doyle. Gender, male. Race, heteromorphic. Level, hidden. Death count, 100. Both Bellriver and Albert looked at me in silence. I couldn't see their faces, however, I could tell they were shocked. Albert was the first to break the silence. Man, you died 100 times? Well, that wasn't expected of a guy who grinds the game 24/7, not to mention you're the #1 player in Yggdrasil. Yet, I still am surprised you even died at all. I lost to you within a second. Not even Touch Me could hold a candle to you either. Makes me wonder who was strong enough to beat you. Hearing this I giggled internally, then shrugged my shoulders once again. You'd be surprised. Besides, I wasn't always as strong as I am now. I had to work hard just like the rest of you. Bellriver finally spoke up. I'm also surprised with this number. After seeing your duels and experiencing combat against you myself, I also agree that it's hard to imagine you were a level 1 player before. After this, Albert tried to make me give a reaction similar to Bellriver by teasing me, saying things like you're the #1 player and you still have deaths in the triple digits, or even Shadow doesn't have more than 8 deaths. How can you let him do better than you? However, after seeing how phlegmatic my replies were to his provocations, he gave up. You're no fun. You gotta quit being so uptight, man. Albert stated. He is right in a way. After spending so many years in the game due to the time dilation I have to deal with, I can agree that a part of me is gone. My reactions are less emotional and I barely have any outrages or tantrums like a normal person. I do laugh from time to time, but it's never more than a giggle, and even when I do laugh loudly it's usually to fit in with the rest of the clan. Now that I think about it, even back then I wasn't normal, was I? Maybe it was because of the people who raised me. Or maybe it's just the way I've always been. It's been a while since I've thought about the past like this. Perhaps seeing my death count brought back memories that happened ages ago. Without warning, I heard Albert yell my name. Doyle? Dude, snap out of it. Are you okay? He blurted. Huh. We've been calling you for the longest, but you seem zoned out, Bellriver added. Oh, sorry, what's up? Now I forgot what I wanted to ask, Albert said, scratching the back of his head. I laughed a little, however, I could see Bellriver still staring at me from the corner of my eye. Seconds later he cleared his throat. It seemed he was going to say what was on his mind. Hey Doyle, maybe you should take a break from the game for a bit? You've been zoned out a lot recently. You really need to worry about your health dash. Don't worry, I'm fine. Besides, we have a raid coming up for the world item, and in a couple more minutes we have another clan meeting, I said, interrupting his words. He stared at me for a while, then nodded and started talking to Albert again. This wasn't out of character for him though. In contrast to Bellriver's character design preferences, he has always been perceptive and intelligent. Now that I think about it, even in the novel, Mominga stated that he was among the intellectual elite of the clan. Snapping out of thought once again, I could hear Albert laughing once again. It seems he was back teasing Bellriver. No, the only reason my death count reached this high was because of my short-sightedness. I chose to take a all-rounder build, which I didn't know was bad until it was too late. It's not my fault, Bellriver complained. It's okay, man. If you're bad, then you're bad. No need to make excuses. My death count is only 66 ha. But now that I think about it, if I had 666 as my death count, I wouldn't be too embarrassed. I sighed. Here he goes. Albert was a unique one. He kind of reminded me of Lucifer, but he had a habit of letting his true Unibio trait loose and embracing his evil side. Bellriver simply sucked his teeth. You know, if you think politically about the update, I feel this was a shot at the heteromorphic race. I mean, think about it. Heteromorphs would definitely have higher death counts due to the racism that was happening. Could this have been a way to make us feel even more inferior? I and Albert both nodded to this. He had a point there. The heteromorphs were definitely being hunted religiously, so it was obvious who had the higher death counts. And now that I thought about it, there was a window on the front screen of the forum pages listing the ratios of deaths from each race. He could be on to something, or he could be digging too deeply into it. Tap, tap, tap. Turning toward the door, I could hear the footsteps of other players coming towards the meeting room. It seems the meeting was finally going to take place. Yo, Month here once again, blessing you guys with another chapter. It's a little late, but it's still Wednesday where I am, so I technically didn't break my oath yet, so praise me at once. I'm thinking about pranking you guys, saying I'm dropping this fic before I post this chapter though. If I did prank you, you may take your anger out here on this paragraph. Heh. Anyway, as always, if you are in need of some non-human, gory, and dark fantasy, check out my original novel, A Cold-Blooded POV, if you want. It's similar to Ghosthood in certain regards, however, I do much more world building and all that good stuff over there since it's the story I'm putting most of my effort into. Without further ado, month out. Chapter 35, Speech Before the Raid. Narrator's POV. Alright guys, remember the plan. Each group will move separately, make sure to keep a close eye at your mini-maps, I don't want anyone getting lost once we enter the forest. The voice that rung out was raspy and light, it didn't sound feminine but it definitely was not as mature as an adult, it reminded one of a teenager. This was Doyle. Today was the day. The day when the clan would attempt to earn their first world item. Currently, the clan of 18 members were in Yotenheim. The clan had been traveling together until this point but they had finally reached the place known as the abandoned jungle. Suddenly a heteromorph in platinum armor walked and stood next to Doyle. He stood stiffly, subconsciously placing his balled fists onto his waist, mimicking a superhero's pose. His crimson half-cape fluttered with the wind dramatically, making his appearance seemed plotted. That's right, today is the day we will attain our first item of world class. This will be a marks for the history of the world of Yggdrasil. Currently, to my knowledge there are only a few guilds with a world-class item. We aren't even a guild, so if we have success with this expedition we will be one of the few groups of players to have a world item in our possession, he blurted loudly. It almost seemed like he was a part of a movie with how dramatic his speech was. However, he continued. And let's not stop here, I can already see us becoming even greater and stronger, with 10x the world items the highest rank guild has. No one will have more world items than us, he shouted. Hearing this everyone clapped and applauded his act, and although he seemed eccentric everyone began to feel some sort of momentum build in their hearts. Everyone apart from Doyle, that is. Instead, Doyle continuously peeked at Touch Me from his side eye. His avatar's face was stale and unemotional. This was the way all players' avatars were. No one could see the facial feature changes within Yggdrasil. Yet, behind that stale face was a boy trying to restrain himself from giggling slightly. Who's gonna tell him? I've already gotten a few world items of my own, not to mention the prismatic ores mines that I currently have hidden behind my illusions. He'd probably pass out from shock if I told him this though, he thought. However, it was obvious to Doyle how Touch Me became the leader of the Nine's own Goal clan and Ainz Ooal Gown Guild in the novel and anime. Touch Me was a natural charismatic person. No matter how corny or cringe his words were, they always carried an effect with them that could move or motivate someone. Doyle smiled internally, then he stepped forward to brief his clansmen one last time before he began the raid. I'll say this one last time guys, because once we enter the jungle we most likely won't have time to message each other in the group chat. The place that we entering is called the Abandoned Jungle. I'm not certain on the specifics regarding the lore, but from what me, Touch Me, and Punitomo read about in a forum, the jungle has a way to confuse players once they enter. However, don't think anti-illusion spells will work against the trickery you encounter because this jungle isn't related to illusion magic. The devs just made it extremely sketchy and confusing, Doyle stated. Pausing for a moment to catch his breath, he continued. As long as you guys stick to the strategy Punitomo and Mominga worked on, we'll be in and out. Hearing his name also being credited, a certain skeleton was smiling internally. Mominga glanced at the ghostly figure in black clothes that almost seemed like a blanket over his head. Mominga felt happy having met Doyle. Even since the first time he met Doyle, Doyle had been nothing but nice to him, showing him different and more efficient ways to level up, giving his veteran tips regarding dungeon running, and even being there as a friend just like everyone else in the clan. Mominga had a simple life, one that he wasn't proud of nor hated. He just followed the rules life had set for himself, go to work, eat food, go to sleep, the natural things. However, when entering the game, he felt more at peace being with his friends. Doyle being one of his first had a huge impression on him, along with the heroic Touch Me hack. Even the pro gamer Punitomo had been nice enough to recommend him to be a part of the planning for the raid. Punito had pointed out to Touch Me and Doyle that Mominga was a wild card, someone that was extremely adaptable, which led to them asking Mominga for his takes on the plan as well. To Mominga it felt good to belong within the Nine's own goal. He'd never wish to move anywhere else. Ahem, well, since everyone is giving their passionate speeches, allow me to bless you guys with some knowledge as well, said someone walking from out of the crowd of clansmen. Giggles could be heard as some of the members realized that it was just Punitomo trying to be a part and look cool. The player that appeared from out the crowd was also a heteromorph. His avatar was shorter than most of his clansmen. He walked carrying his magic staff in of his hands, giving him a commander-like look. His other hand stretched and extended, resembling large green roots. He was a race of the Death Vine, a plant-type race. As he finally reached the front and stood next to the other two co-leaders, he spoke. I look forward to seeing how far we grow after attaining this world item. I have faith that we will succeed. I have thoroughly sketched out every detail that I possibly could with the knowledge that we know. Punito paused, giving a glance toward Doyle, then pointed his long rude arm. Besides, we have the #1 ranked player with us, he said jokingly, causing a laugh to resonate with the others. Anyway, to conclude my speech, I will quote the brave and courageous Sun Tzu. Panic is the seed of defeat, so you must maintain your calm and think logically. Remain calm, look beyond your surroundings, and don't waste your effort on unnecessary details. With that the clan began the raid. Chapter is here. Praise me if I decide to post a second chapter, it'll either be tomorrow or the day after. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. If it wasn't clear from what I have been writing, I have been attempting to flesh out some of the characters from the Ainz Ooal Gown Guild. It's why the pace has slowed a bit, but I'm not doing it to the point of where I'm completely slowing down the story. Things will proceed as planned. I'm just trying to give this more a novel feeling rather than a fic, you know? Anyway, as always, if you are in need of some non-human, gory, and dark fantasy, check out my original novel, A Cold-Blooded POV, if you want. It's similar to Ghosthood in certain regards, however, I do much more world building and all that good stuff over there since it's the story I'm putting most of my effort into. Also from now on, instead of sending power stones here, could you perhaps gift them to CBPOV instead? You see, at this point I no longer am trying to grow this fic's popularity. My only job now is to properly finish this story for the readers who have been reading this far in, to not become another statistic fic author who drops his/her story after a couple chapters. Without further ado, month out. Chapter 36, Report. I know you all are not going to like it. In fact, you may even hate it, but I'm going to let you know right now, any upcoming chapters that I had planned for Ghosthood is going to be delayed. I enjoy writing Ghosthood. It was something that I started impulsively after reading other fantastic Overlord fanfics. Once I started to receive supporting comments, reviews, and readers who loved it, it made me happy and I enjoyed even more. I do regret abruptly pausing and resuming the work repeatedly like I have been doing so far. However, so many things happen in a person's life, from health to the amount of free time one possesses. Fanfics usually gets pushed down to the bottom of priorities. It just is what it is, nothing is going to change that. The main reason why I'm delaying this fanfic is because I'm going to participate in the new Carnival Fantasy contest that is being hosted on Web Novel. Not only that, I'm also writing my other novel CBPOV, which I take very seriously. Let's be honest and real for a second, fanfics are simply fan service stories. They are nothing but inspirations and ideas that are formed through reading and/or watching another's original ideas, then transformed into a story of some sort, which usually only lasts until the author loses interest in that specific topic. They don't provide anything but self-satisfaction. One could monetize their fanfic by using third-party apps for donations and things of that nature, but I never wanted to earn money from Ghosthood. Ghosthood was a process for me, a process that allowed me to grow my writing skills. That's it. Wait, this makes it sound like Ghosthood is being eviscerated from the planet Earth. I'm not dropping Ghosthood, but this will be on hiatus. Point is, I will be much too busy to worry about this story. And I'd rather be less stressed rather than trying to work, take care of my health, write 2 other novels, and write Ghosthood. It's the most logical decision and I'm sure most would do the same in my circumstances. I want to become an author, one that can write full-time, and to do that I already have to make enough sacrifices for the appropriate amount of writing time. I can't waste that time doing something that doesn't help me financially right now. Hopefully you guys understand. Again, this story is going on temporary hiatus. I'm not dropping it. Though, you are entitled to unsave the book if you want, all up to you lol. See you next update. Month.